All right. Good afternoon, JCPS. I hope you are doing well. My name is Matt Bolka. I'm one of the digital innovation leaders for the high school zone, and I am super excited to be here with you this afternoon. We have an awesome schedule that we're going to get into in just a second, so let's take a look at it. I hope you had a good lunch. I hope you had a good morning with your students or your faculty or staff or whomever you've been with today. We are going to start our afternoon training session with some Savvis Realize training, part 1. And then we're going to move into Microsoft Team meetings for synchronous learning with me and my colleague Kyle Chandler. After that, at 2 o'clock, we're going to do remote map testing with Holly Sears from NWEA. Sorry, she wasn't part of NWA. That's a totally different thing. Then we're going to move into part 2 of our Savvis training, and then we're going to end today with Michelle Shorey and Microsoft Teams for ELs. So, Sandra's here with us right now from Savvis, and I'm going to let her take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, so the first part of our training today, we're just going to kind of go over the basic overview of the Realize platform. So what I'm going to do with you right now is just share my screen and go over the agenda for this afternoon. Okay, so everyone should be seeing just my agenda overview for this afternoon. For this first one, level 1 session. So right now we will be looking at a brief walkthrough of the Realize platform. I'm going to show you how to create custom content on Realize. That also includes creating an assignment on Realize as well as creating a playlist. And we'll be talking about the differences between the two. And then we'll also be taking a little deeper dive into the remote learning features on Realize. And then if time permits, some Q&A and wrap up. If you are joining us right now, there should also be people Savvis people in our in the chat right now to help you with any questions that you may have about Realize. Okay, so I'm going to get out of here and we're going to go live right away into Realize. So just bear with me for 1 second as I sign in. Oh, of course, because I waited so long, let me refresh this. Okay. All right. So everyone should be able to see my Realize platform right now. First thing you may notice is that we had some new features added this weekend. So there may be a pop-up when you do show or sign up for the first time, but you can just hit the X and it will disappear. Okay, so we're going to be using Envision Math as our program to model with this afternoon in Realize. I know that you will have many different programs to choose from. And I know Jaren later on this afternoon will be going over some of this when she discusses how to integrate Realize with the Google Classroom. But today for this hour session, we're just going to be focusing on the how to navigate Realize and utilize the remote features in Realize. Okay, so the first thing that we're looking at right now is the homepage. So I just want to briefly go over what is available to you on the homepage. So obviously you have 2 different ways to navigate, either through the toolbar up top or the circles right here in the middle of the homepage. We're going to focus on 2 pieces right now, though, on the homepage. First thing I want to navigate you to is the help option on the homepage. So when we click on this question mark, it will direct you to a couple of pages, but I want to focus on 2 pages right here. The program training, which takes you directly to our My Savvis training website. It's free to register for this. If and when you do get the chance, we highly encourage you to register for this. And it's basically a 24/7 place where you can gain access to any of our virtual trainings. We're going to be going over a lot of features within this hour. And then I know when you meet with Jaren in the next hour, more features. So anything that we discussed today, please feel free to hop on over to My Savvis training. And it's very simple. All you need to do is just put in a search topic, and right from here you can go in and access anything that you may need that we're covering today. If you go down to the view all trainings, you'll notice that there are on-demand trainings, depending on what your title is, to help you search for anything that we'll be discussing today, whether it be if you want to see it through a video tutorial or just read and print out the PDF handout. Sky is the limit here, really. So just wanted to point you in the direction of where you can get some help here, from the platform page itself, from Realize. The other page that I wanted to navigate you to is our technical support page. Um, so the other thing about the technical support is really that it's just for technical support. So program training would be anything content based, depending on program. Technical support is if you're having any technical issues with Realize. So when I click on the tech support link, here is where it will direct you. So again, Jaren will be talking about Google Classroom this afternoon in our second session, and there is basically an A to Z answer sheet here for how to integrate Google Classroom that Jaren will be going over within detail later on this afternoon. So again, just wanted to point you in the direction of where you could go if and when you needed any type of program support. That would be program training, or technical support with anything embedded having to do with Realize or Google Classroom. Okay, the other feature that I wanted to bring to your attention here on the Realize page is the magnifying glass. So this is one way to access our search engine. So you could search any type of content that lives here on Realize, as well as our other search engine called OpenEd, which is a vetted search engine for educational resources. So if, for example, I wanted to search for arrays, I would just type that into my search board and wait for a little bit, and hopefully it's tabulating all of the information that we're going to need right now. Just bear with us for a moment. All right, and when it pops up, the first type of search that you will see will be for things having to do or associated with things that are already embedded within Realize. So here you can find grade-specific content under the what we searched for, which was arrays, whether it's teacher only, if there's rubrics, and what type of media it is. The other way that you could also search, so you'll notice right here in the upper right-hand corner, it says search results from OpenEd. When I choose that icon, it takes me specifically to media content, whether it be video, games, assessments, lesson plans, or homework that is from vetted educational resources such as Khan Academy. I think I saw Brain Candy on here recently. So you really do have great options here to add other content from other vetted educational resources, and you can assign it right from the search to your students if needed. So just wanted to show you where you could find that. And again, that would be on your homepage, and you can go right to the magnifying glass. I just noticed in the chat a lot of you are asking about logins for Realize yet. I do recall from this morning that it will most likely happen sometime either later this week or next week, but I see that a lot of you in the chat are helping, so I appreciate that. Okay, so right now we're just going to do a brief overview of what you can find on Realize. And again, I'm going to be using Envision Math as my program just to model for today. So as I mentioned earlier, you can browse either from your toolbar up top, or you can browse from the circles right below. So we'll click browse and we'll get started. And again, your platform, once you gain access, will look different than mine, only because we'll be servicing different programs. I'm going to be using third grade as my example today. So when you click on the program that you're trying to access, there are two ways to view content on Realize. The way that I am viewing it right now is in list view, and basically that just means that you can see everything in a nice, neat list. The other way to view content on Realize is through the thumbnail view. And in order to change that, you just click thumbnail, and it will change automatically. So these are it's the same content, it's just that it's a larger icon. And if you want to see all of the options available to you within that icon, you would just click the options button. Okay. This is already kind of freaking me out a little bit. So I'm just going to go right back to list view because I'm very type A. I need to see everything in a list. So again, just using Envision as the example, everything for Envision will live on a couple of pages in Realize. The way that it's organized, though, depends on which page you're navigating to. So, for example, on the table of contents page, everything that I will need for the entire year for Envision will live on the table of contents page. So, we're just going to, again, quick overview of what to notice. So there's usually a way to an introduction to help you get started with Envision Math. There is support for distance learning, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Here on your table of contents page, you will find your entire Teacher's Edition digitally available for you, as well as a Spanish companion if you need it, as well as your Teacher's Edition program overview, also known as our TPO for short. So the differences between the two basically is that your Teacher's Edition is where all of your lessons live, and your Teacher's Edition program overview, your TPO, is where your pacing guides would live, as well as your math background for what you'll be teaching. Also living on your table of contents page in Envision will be classroom videos that will help you with how things should go, as well as any type of readiness test, animations, vocabulary, and access to all of your topics, among some other resources that we'll be talking about at a later date. The other thing I wanted to mention is, before we go on to any other place, you'll notice that there are some tabs that have icons. So I just wanted to break down what each of the icons mean. So if you see something that has a lock next to it, it doesn't mean that you don't have access to it. It just means that the students will not have access to it. So, for example, our Teacher's Edition, even though it says you can add it to a playlist, I don't think that we would want to add our Teacher's Edition to a playlist. So that's why you have the lock right there. Another icon that you may notice will be something that looks like a silhouette with a slash through it. And that means that in order for the students to see it on their Realize platform, you would need to assign it to your class or to your student. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit. And finally, one of the other icons you may notice is we have something that looks like a book with a house on it. And again, we'll be talking more about that in a little bit. That basically means that these are socially distant learning resources that you could utilize to enhance your distance learning instruction. Okay, all right. So also on your table of contents page, you'll notice that there are some drop-down menus. So we'll come back to this create content menu in a moment, but I want to go to our teacher resources. So again, if everything that you'll need for the year lives on your table of contents page, that means that anything under these teacher resources also applies. So these are your teacher resources for the entire year digitally. So your answer keys for assessments in both English and Spanish live here, basic fact time tests, language support handbook, which are really just graphic organizers, which are kind of awesome for any student, doesn't have to be an English language learner. Anybody who needs organization could fully utilize these. And then you also have something called teaching tools. These teaching tools are grade specific, and that's why I'm kind of calling them out to you right now, because if you see it here in third grade, it will look different in kindergarten. So let's just take a look right now at what these teaching tools look like. These are all PDFs. However, you'll notice that you can download them so that you as the teacher can save them to your desktop so that you never have to search for them ever again. But you can also then download these, save them, and either push them out to your families if they need them. So again, grade specific teaching tools available to you. And let me show you what is available for third grade. So here we have some problem solving recording sheets for students who might need some organization. We also have place value blocks in print form. Your students will have access to digital content such as virtual manipulatives. However, we know that research has found that handheld tactile manipulatives would be most beneficial for students. So if you have parents that possibly reach out and say, is there a way for us to gain some sort of manipulative, you may want to send these digitally to parents and then give them the possibility of printing them out, or just having them available to them digitally. Totally your call. Just wanted to show you where they live. So in the event that you need them for a family, that you know where you can find them. All right, so I'm going to go back to our table of contents page. Um, and that's all really right there for the teacher resources on the table of contents page. We're going to now navigate to our topic page, and I'll use topic 1 as my example in 3rd grade. So if everything that is on the table of contents page houses everything that you'll need for the entire year, what you'll need on the topic page lives on the topic page, basically. So here again, you'll find your teacher's edition, but specifically just for this topic, so you don't have to look through the whole digital content. Also, same here, Spanish Companion. You have professional development videos, which are from the authors of Envision. And then you have all of your topic content, which also includes all of your lessons, which we will come back to. So on your table of contents page, you had teacher resources for the year. So the teacher resources on your topic page will be all of your teacher resources that you will need for this specific topic. So if you want to use homeschool connection letters in both English and Spanish and digitally send those to your families, you could. You also have some problem solving level reading mats, which are some differentiated pieces that you will learn about at a later date. So the other thing I want to bring your attention to is this second drop down. So you noticed it on the table of contents page, and here it is again on your topic page. So what lives here, right? So if I click the create content again, you'll notice that you have 3 separate tabs that you can navigate to. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our upload a file. So when I click that, basically what this is where you can upload content from other places that you would like to bring into Realize and then assign to your students. So from here, you can attach a file from your own computer, or if you have a Google Drive, or if you have a Microsoft OneDrive. So this might be really good if you are sharing content among teachers within the same grade band. If you want to share the same type of materials, this may be one way that you could share content amongst a grade and then share it out to your students and families. So how does this work? So basically what you would do is you would click on whichever file you would like to upload from, and then you would just go ahead and attach that file. And then you'll have to give it a title and certify that you have the right to do this, and then click add. Once you've done that, it will live and move to your content or your My Library. So let me show you what that looks like. So when I click on My Library, here is where you can find all the content that you have uploaded into Realize. And it will also refine it even further for you as a link, a video, etc. So what I did just to kind of make sure that this actually did work was I uploaded a video. So I'm going to hit refine by video. And I uploaded a video of snow falling in my backyard in March because I live in Western Massachusetts. So just to make sure that it works, let me show you. And sure enough, it's snowing in August, almost September, but really that's from March. So yes, you can upload videos here, you can upload images, audio, and then how would we add it to, let's say, a library or to a playlist or an assignment? I would just click these 3 option buttons right here, and then you'll have the option to either remove it, assign it, or add it to a playlist. So really, you have the potential to add so many things and make your digital learning so much, so personalized and differentiated for each and every one of your students. All right, so you can also, let me go back just for a moment. So as I had mentioned before, besides creating or uploading a file, you could also add a link. So if I, let's say, add a link, and then it will just ask you to connect to a URL. So for example, let's say I wanted to use my Savage training and link that. Again, you don't have to do that, but I'm just using this as an example. I could just copy and paste that into the URL. I get a success notification that it worked, and then I would just put in a title and description if I wanted to for my students and family and add it. Oh, I have to add a title. So we'll just call this at home stuff, and then click add, It'll take a minute to upload, and then success. Now it lives in my content, and I can either assign this or remove it from my content. Okay, so let me go back to our topic page. All right, so again, table of contents houses everything that you'll need for the year. Your topic page houses everything you'll need for this specific topic, because in Envision, this is what we focus on. And then we would go to the lesson page. And on the lesson page is where everything would live for your lesson. And I also like this because it also goes in the flow of how the lesson should go for Envision Math. So again, at the top of all of your lesson pages, regardless of grade, what you will find, again, is your digital version of your Teacher's Edition. And this is just specific to your grade. So let me show you what your digital version of your Teacher's Edition will look like. So in order to access your Teacher's Edition, you'll just click on the tab. It will always prompt you to open in a new window, which is a great feature, because then once your Realize Reader opens up, you'll be able to toggle back and forth, especially when you're planning. You'll be able to toggle back and forth between your Teacher's Edition and your digital content on Realize. So that's pretty cool. So let me show you again what the Realize Reader looks like. Right now, we're just viewing it in a one-page view, but if you want to experience what it would actually look like, per se, in a two-page view, you could just click the two-page view tab. And it should look exactly like this. So from here, you'll be able to zoom in, so you can pay close attention to the focus, coherence, and rigor of each lesson, as well as gain understanding of what the essential questions or understandings would be for all of your students. And you can also just click the left and right arrows to continue to navigate digitally through your Teacher's Edition. So yeah, this is a really cool feature. You'll also have the capabilities to bookmark and highlight in your Teacher's Edition e-text as well. So just wanted to show you what that would look like, or your Teacher's Edition, what that would look like on Realize, and how to access that. Also, what you have available here besides your digital version of your Teacher's Edition on each lesson page is you also have the interactive Student Edition. So now I'm going to open up the Student Edition so that you could see what it will look like on the student side when they access it. Okay, so here we have the interactive Student Edition. And the great thing about this is that students will have quick access to their I can statements. If they hit menu, they'll have a notebook where they can jot down any of their noticings, or have added things to discuss. They can add it into their notebook. And you as the teacher can also view their notebook entries on Realize through your Classes tab. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Besides that, the other great feature about the Interactive Student Edition is that it's one thing that you have to assign to students, and it has all of the components of the lesson right there for them. So all of the pieces of an Envision Math lesson, so your solve and share, your visual learning, the convince me, the guided practice, and the problem solving are all here digitally for your students. And the other great feature is that when students are working in their Interactive Student Edition, it will annotate for you in live time. So even if the students do not submit their work to you, you will be able to see their work in real time on the teacher side. So that's a great feature to have. All right. In order to see that work, though, you do still have to assign the work to the students. So how do we do that? First thing, though, we need to do is look at the lesson page and identify what are some things that we can assign. And anything that we can assign will have that little assign tab in the toolbar right there. So you'll notice I have a lot of things that I can assign to my students, and it can get really, really exciting at first to kind of assign everything to our students. However, we want to start off small and work our way up, because we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, and we also don't want to overwhelm our students and our families. So when we are assigning things, the very first day, so let's say I'm a third grade teacher, this is my very first lesson and I'm going to teach it. the first thing I want to assign to my students is that interactive student edition. Your students will already have access to it. However, I always like to assign it so that I can see it in one spot for my entire class. And that's true for anything that you assign to students that you want to just quickly take a glance at. And that's the difference between creating an assignment versus creating a playlist. So when we create an assignment, we're creating something that students will be able to see, engage with, and then return back so that we can either score or provide feedback. So, how do we assign something? Super simple. So, I want to assign this student edition for my students. I'm just going to hit the assign button and you'll get this pop up screen. It will give you the title of what it is that you will be assigning, and then you would create a start date and a due date. So I can just hit my start date, we'll just say today, and then my due date, maybe I want to have students have access to this the entire week. Just as a sidebar, your students will have access to this 24/7. However, if you want to see the activities that they are doing on Realize, you want to go in every single lesson and create this as an assignment, their interactive student edition. So you can also set the start times and end times for when students will have access to this assignment. But just for the interactive student edition, I just like it having students have access to it whenever they need to. And then you can add any instructions here for students that you would like for them to read prior to completing the task or the assignment. And then this box is always checked. So we always want to make sure that we're reporting back data on the included activities. So this is the only way that you'll be able to see all of the interactive content that the students use, as well as any type of notebook prompts, things like that that they include. So I always, just as a best practice, keep that box checked. So when we're going in and creating an assignment, we can create this assignment for our entire class in one felt swoop if we wanted to, or I could assign it to an individual student in my class, or I could assign it to a group that I've created on Realize. I don't have any groups created on Realize for this class right now, so it wouldn't pop up, but you could do that for creating an assignment. I'm going to get rid of this student, because he's part of my group already. So once I've decided who I would want to assign this assignment to, you just hit assign and you get a confirmation that says, nice, you've created an assignment. It's literally that easy. Okay, so earlier I had said that we were going to talk about the differences between creating an assignment versus creating a playlist. So again, just as a best practice, I always say, assign things by themselves that you just want to get to access to, right? So the interactive student editions are something that I just want quick access to right away. Some other features that I would want quick access to right away could possibly also be the quick check for an Envision Math lesson, because this is our way to formally assess students for every one of our sessions or lessons. So that might be something that I just want to quickly assign to my entire class. And when I go to look at the data, it's in one place. And also I may want to do that with something called Practice Buddy. So for teachers in grades K through 5, you will have access to Practice Buddy. Kindergarten, your access for Practice Buddy starts in topic 6. So for your first couple of topics, you wouldn't see this. Also, teachers in grades K through 2, you only have one version of Practice Buddy. Teachers in grades 3 through 5, you will have 2 versions of Practice Buddy. One that mirrors the student's independent practice during the lesson, and one that mirrors their additional practice when they are working on homework. So again, this is something that you could assign to students as additional practice or as their independent practice. But the other great feature about this is that you can customize these. And you actually have the ability to customize any of your assessments, as well as your formative assessments, summative assessments, or just additional practice pages for your students. So again, great feature that you can customize, and I'm sure that you'll be talking about this at a later date. The other thing I want to make mention of, just because it's right here in front of us, is the adaptive practice by powered by Newton. This is only available for grades K through 3. Excuse me, it's only available for grades 3 through 5. K2 through 2, you won't have this on your platform. And basically, what this is the more that you assign those digital pieces, such as the practice buddies, the digital quick checks, the digital assessments, the Newton program will take all of this information and adapt practice specifically to the student. So everyone would possibly be getting personalized practice the more that you are assigning these digital tasks. So it might be something that you may want to play around with as the school year progresses. Okay, so again, just really quickly, just taking a quick glance at all of the things that we see on the lesson page, you'll notice that there are a lot of things that we can assign, and there's also a lot of things that we can add to a playlist. So let's talk about playlists now. So earlier I had said you want to assign things that you want to stand alone, such as assessments or the interactive student edition, so that you can kind of take a quick glance at student work by class. Playlists are more of something that you would possibly use on asynchronous learning days or times. So in order to add something to a playlist, you'll notice that there's something called select all. So anything that you can add to a playlist that students would see, you could just, in theory, click this select all, but you'll notice there are so many things that you can add to a playlist. And a lot of these things can be redundant. Remember, if we're giving students the interactive student edition, they already have access to the solve and share and the visual learning and that convince me piece. So if we add these to a playlist, we're really just doubling the work that we're assigning to students. So the playlist I like to look at as like a menu of things that students can complete at their own rate or at their own pace. So during asynchronous learning. So again, just as a best practice, you always want to start off small so that you can manage the situation as well as your students and your families. It can be very overwhelming for families. So we want to, again, just give them the bare minimum in the playlist as like a menu of options to complete digitally and then submit to teachers so that we can grade them. So what could we add to a playlist? Well, on our lesson page alone, we have so many options here. Remember, I want to assign my interactive student edition separately. But then we have these other features such as daily review and the today's challenge. So really quickly, let me show you what the daily review is. Normally, it's just a PDF that you would have for every one of your lessons. And normally teachers would use this as kind of like a do now, or if we finish work early, maybe this is a page that they can go back to and work on some review questions from previous topics. So normally I would tell teachers, just download these and then print them out at your leisure. However, you guys are so lucky because if I look in daily review and I go to teacher resources and I hit that, y'all, it's editable. So if I go to the editable worksheet, it opens up in Word, and right from here, I can revise this for however I need this for my students to see it. So if I didn't want 9 questions here, maybe I just wanted the first column, I could just make it the first column, and then I could assign that digitally to my students and they can complete that. So you really do have options when it comes to what you can assign to students, whether it be through an assignment or through a playlist. Another thing that I could assign to my students would be the today's challenge. So let's say I click on the today's challenge and I want my students to complete this digitally. So they would listen to a factoid, and then there are 5 different types of questions that they can answer digitally. And then they could then digitally hand this in, and they could use the draw pad features that you see right here on the page to annotate and then digitally submit it to the teacher. So this might be something that you too want to add to a playlist for students to complete independent on asynchronous learning days. So how do we create a playlist and how do we send it and push it out to our students? So here we go. Here's how you create a playlist. So after you've previewed all the things that you want to assign to your students, and that's just a best practice, whether it's an assignment, or if you're adding it to a playlist. Please preview whatever you're going to assign so that you know what you're pushing out to your students. So let's say I want to add the daily review and I want to add the today's challenge to a playlist. And then maybe if I go through my differentiated pieces that I have for every one of my lessons, maybe I also want to assign my students the Another Look video. And what the Another Look video is just a more explicit video for students to understand the math. This might also be good just in the first couple of lessons to assign anyways to your playlist so that you have parents that might need some extra math support. And this is a great way for them to understand the math. I know when I left the classroom, I had a lot of my parents emailing me and being like, I didn't learn the way that you're teaching. So give me some pointers. The Another Look videos are great explicit videos that you could share with your families through a playlist and have the parents watch the videos as well. Okay, so I've picked the 3 things that I want to create my playlist with. Let's go in and create the playlist. So if I scroll back up to my lesson page, I'll just hit Add Selected to a Playlist. And again, I don't have a playlist created already, so I want to click Create a New Playlist. And right from here, you just give it a title. So maybe I just call it Topic 1, Lesson 1-1, and then maybe I'll put 3rd grade just so I can differentiate in my list. Who knows if you have more than one grade that you're teaching, that sort of thing. So this is how, when you create the playlist, this is how the students will see it on their end. And again, you can type in a description if you choose, but again, that is optional. So once I've created my title, I hit Create Playlist. And I get a confirmation success. Now let's go to that playlist. Now again, I have not assigned anything yet. The way I'm looking at it right now is how my students will see it on their end. Maybe I don't want them to see the Another Look video first. Maybe I want them to do the daily review first, then watch the video, and then attempt the today's challenge. Remember, this is all asynchronous learning. So this is not something that they'll be doing while I'm watching them or we're live or anything like that. So I want to make sure that it goes in the order in which I want the students to complete the work. So here I would hit Edit. And again, here's my title. I can give a description here again. So maybe I tell students, please, sorry about that. Please complete the daily review first. Okay, and then we hit, oh wait, I have to edit it first. So first thing I want to do is I want to edit. So I'll move my daily review, and then I want my Another Look video, and then the today's challenge. So now that I have it in the order in which I want the students to complete it in, I would just hit save, and ta-da, changes have been saved. I still have not assigned anything yet though. So now let's assign it to our students. So what I'm going to do is hit select all, and then I'm going to assign all. And it should look exactly like how it looked before when you created an assignment. The only difference is that when you're creating an assignment in Envision, it's green. And when you're adding or creating a playlist, it's highlighted purple. The other thing you'll notice is that the icons will also change. So if it's a playlist, it may look a little like this. So again, right from here, apologies if you hear my dog. So again, from here, you just want to hit your start date and you want to hit your due date. And again, you can have this open or available for your students or as long or as short as you'd like. So again, here also could set the start times and end times, any instructions. And again, you still have the capability of creating or assigning this playlist for your class, a group of students, or one specific student. So again, I'll just use my demo class and I will hit assign, and wonderful, I've created an assignment. Super simple. What's that gonna look like on the student side? So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna sign out as myself, and now I'm gonna log back in as one of the students from that class. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that I've done here is I've actually changed the theme for my students on Realize. If you utilize the default theme, it'll look exactly like it does on the teacher end. And we have found sometimes that students can get stuck down a rabbit hole of searching for things. So, just as a best practice, I always tend to change it to the early learning theme, which has two buttons for students to navigate to. Their explore button, which is where everything that they will have access to for the entire year lives, or my work, which is where everything that you've assigned to the students, whether it be an assignment standing alone or a playlist, will live. So here I'm going to go to my work as the student, and you'll see here are all of the assignments that I have assigned to this student. So you see their student interactive edition, just like we had seen it before. And then here are some of the other assignments that I have assigned to students, or to this student specifically. Anything that the student has already submitted to the teacher will go move to my completed work. So anything that the student has already turned in. So for example, if I wanted to review the student work, and this is how students would submit it, they would just hit send to teacher. As the student, I can also go in and look at my completed work that I've already submitted to the teacher. So I think I might have done some work in here. I'm not 100% sure. Just so I can show you. Yep, so I annotated some things in here also. So students will have all of these annotation tools at their disposal, and they'll be able to annotate right here in the student edition. So, one other thing before I go back to the teacher side. So within the assignments, students can also gain access to not just things that we've assigned to them, but if they go to their e-text, they'll be able to, well, again, demo account, so it looks a little different, but you'll have your students will have access to all of their e-text available to them. And they will also have access to the digital game center, as well as the virtual manipulatives available to them to complete tasks. So again, and it will also prompt them to open in a new window, and they will have access to all of these virtual manipulatives. You as well will have access to all of these virtual manipulatives. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to sign back out of the student, and I'm going to go back in as myself so I can show you what that will look like on the teacher side. Okay, so here again on the teacher side, if we want to go and kind of view our student work that they've submitted, how do we do that? So one way again is to either just go to classes up top, or you can go to the circle again on the bottom. So let's just go to classes. And if you have more than one class, obviously you will see it here in your class section. So let's look at third grade and see some of the features that are available to you here. So let's say I have my students on the default setting and I want to change it over to the early learning theme setting. So in order to do that, we would just find our class that we want to change and go to class settings. When we go there, we're going to scroll down to the bottom, and you'll notice there's just two themes. The default theme, which again looks exactly like our page. So again, if you are an upper grade teacher, you may want to keep that. But if you are a lower grade teacher, or even a 3 through 5 teacher, and you want to convert to the early learning theme just because you think it'll be easier for your families to navigate, you have the capabilities to do so. So if you don't want to change the theme, just click the early learning theme, and make sure you hit save after any changes that you've made. And again, you get a confirmation. Super, you're all set to go. Quacktastic. We're going to move on to something else. All right, so back on our classes page. Let's say I want to see an assignment. Maybe my students have started working on a task that I've already assigned to them. So I want to see maybe who started, or who's in process, or who's submitted. So in order to do that, we would just go to our assignments tab. And here you can find any assignment that you have already pushed out to your students. So for example, for the interactive student edition. I want to see who's completed it, who's in progress. So in order to do that, I would just find the assignment. This would be a playlist, so that's how you can differentiate between what you've assigned. Anything that's an assessment will have this red circle with a check, and any interactive will have the actual picture of the student's interactive book on there. So let's look at the interactive. And right from here, I can see that 2 students have completed, no one's in progress, and 8 have yet to start. So I'm going to hit view student status. And right from here, I can go and navigate and see who's completed what. So again, if I click on this student, I can review their activities based off of what they've done in the interactive book. So again, I can just pick the section that I want to observe or look at. And again, same thing that we had seen before on the student side, I can see everything that the student has submitted. And then I could go, if there was a notebook entry, I could go in here and look to see if there was a notebook entry as well. This student did not put one, and that's okay. But this is how I can go in and view how my students have annotated in the student interactive edition, which is pretty cool. And I love that we can also view it without the students necessarily submitting it. So if we see any misconceptions, we can kind of check in with the students as well as they're working on their task. All right. So just as a sidebar, just as a best practice, you can see, I mean, and again, I've been doing this for a couple of weeks already, just with back to school season, and my work queue is starting to get really, really messy. So how do we clean this up? Because this is, again, you noticed on the student side, their completed work moves over to that folder, but after they continue to complete assignments and tasks, even their completed work queue is going to get bogged down. So how can we get rid of assignments, let's say? Well, the first thing I should clear up is that you can never delete an assignment. You can hide assignments, which is great because you never want to delete anything because that means you're deleting data, and data is good. So we don't want to delete anything. We just want to hide things, right? So how do we do that? You'll notice right here, if we're in classes under assignments, that we can hide the assignments. So I'm just going to click that hide assignments tab, and then I can go in as the teacher and I can delete anything that I've already assigned, whether it be an assessment or the interactive student edition or a playlist. Anything that I've already assigned to students and I want to take off of their work queue, I'm going to hide. So once I've determined all of the pieces that I would like to hide, I hit save, and it'll just take a minute. Congrats, success, you've hidden an assignment. But now let's say that I've hidden an assignment and then I get an email or a text from a parent that says, I can't find that online assessment that you gave to the students last week. I wanted to go over the scores with my child. Can I have that again? Of course you can. All is not lost. So how do we get it back? So right here, you'll notice there is a current and a hidden to show. You're going to click hidden, and now it will take you to a folder where all of the assignments that you have hidden from your class live. So in order to push it back out to students, you would just hit unhide, and ta-da, it goes back to the current slide. So then it will be available to your students and families again. Oops, sorry, I went too far. So there you go, it's right there. So just remember, you don't delete anything. You're only hiding it after, just again, as a best practice, I usually do after the topic, after the students have completed with it. I kind of hide those assignments so that their work queue gets cleared out so that we can start fresh with the program that we are utilizing. Okay. So yeah, you can also search for assignments by student if you didn't want to search by class as well. So you have some flexibility in how you view the assignments as well. Also, just wanted to show you a calendar feature that does not show up on the student side. It's just on the teacher side that shows when you have given an assignment and when it's due. So again, just for your own, planning purposes, you can also look on the calendar under your classes to determine when assignments could be due by program. So that's pretty cool. All right. The other thing I wanted to show you really quickly, because we have some time, is the students and groups. So if you wanted, let's say, to create a group within Realize, you would do that under your classes tab. So again, you would find your class, click on students and groups. This is the list of your students. And then right from here, you'll see there's something that says show groups. And you'll have to bear with me because this is a demo. So everyone has been using my demo account, and I have a plethora of groups. So right from here, what I can do is I could, let's say I have the Tic Tac group, and I can manage my students and groups this way. I could add students to the group. I can add the same student to multiple groups if I wanted to. You can work in and out of these groups often. So oftentimes I have teachers that just create 3 groups, especially for differentiated times. Maybe they're high, middle, low. Obviously they wouldn't call those groups that, but you know what I'm saying. So they would have 3 groups for differentiated purposes, and then they could easily push out playlists for those differentiated groups. Again, don't expect this the very first day, but if you are a type A like myself, you will probably have your groups planned out already. But anyway, so in order to just add these students to the group, I've highlighted those 3 students that I would like in that group, and then I hit save. And again, you get a confirmation that you have added these students to the group. If I go to my Tic Tac group, again, I apologize for all the sliding up and down, but right from here, I can identify really quickly who's in that group. And then I can go back in and manage the students and groups. So if I wanted to take Indigo out and add Marigold, P.S. it says that he's been removed from your class. It's not from the class, it's just from the group. But they're still on your roster, I promise you. And easy swap out. There we go. Again, your student has not been removed. It's just removed from the group. So you can go right into that Tic Tac group again. And you can see the group, the students in that group. Okay, last thing before I turn it over, let's talk about really quickly some of the remote learning features that you will find on Realize. And again, depending on the program in which you're navigating to. The first thing I wanted to point out to you is the distance learning features. And again, these could possibly be grade specific, so make sure that you're accessing them when you do get access to Realize, that you're accessing the grade that obviously you would like the support in. So for Envision, for example, in our distance learning support, you'll notice a couple of features here. So we have an overview of the distance learning support, which is kind of just a PDF going through some of the challenges of this year and some of the test taking tips and analysis that would be available to you throughout this distance learning time. Also for Envision Math, and again, depending on the program that you're accessing, it could be different. But for Envision Math, in distance learning, you'll notice that this is actually a video. So here, I believe it's almost a 13-minute video for Envision Math that will break down some tips for distance learning. And within this one, there's actually a model lesson for a remote learning lesson. It's a really great video. So when you do gain access to Realize, I highly recommend you watching this video. It will give you some great pointers. Also, ways to support Envision Learning or Envision Math during distance learning. So again, this is just a nice little takeaway for you, which breaks down what pieces of the lesson that you could incorporate within a remote learning lesson and some scenarios that will help map out how you can maintain fidelity of an Envision Math lesson utilizing remote resources, as well as some assessment pointers and tips. So again, when you do gain access to your own Realize account, please feel free to take a look at these. We also have some guidance documents for key concepts of the previous year. So prior to locking down and quarantining, if there were some missing units, you could also go back to the previous grade for or some foundational support with Envision. And remember, these last two documents are grade specific, so they will look different on every page. And again, just some priority instruction for grade 3 because that's what we're on right now. And the last thing I wanted to point out to you is that you probably noticed on a couple of these, or every page that we've been navigating to, that there's this toggle for show distance learning resources. So when I click on that toggle, it basically will then streamline what you will see for distance learning. So these are all of the components that in theory you could go in and assign to your students and families for distance learning. So it kind of just pares it down for you. And you'll notice all of them have that book with a home icon because it will relate to distance learning. So for example, if I untoggle that and go to a topic page, and let's say I go into the next lesson, if I just want to see some of the resources that are available, I can switch that toggle and it will change what is available to me to assign or create a playlist from. So really, it kind of just edits for you, if you will. But if you want to see all of the resources, you will just untoggle that and you will be able to see all of the resources available to you on that specific page. Whew, so we've gone over a lot of things in this last hour, and I want to say thank you because I saw all of your questions coming in the chat. So thank you guys so much for being attentive and active listeners. Again, just wanted to point you to my Savvis training for, again, any kind of resource that you may need, whether it be digital or whether it be 3 o'clock in the morning and something popped into your head and you're like, wait, I need to know how to create a group again. You can go on to my Savvis training. I hope you're not doing that at 3 in the morning, but if you're like me, you probably are. So again, I just wanted to say thank you again let me stop sharing my screen. I just wanted to say thank you again for being an awesome audience. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. And thanks, guys. And in the next hour, the next session, we'll be talking about Google integration with Realize with Jaron. So thanks, guys.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it. No internet issues this time, too, so that's awesome.
So happy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you again, guys, so much.
All right. Have a good rest of your Monday.
You too. Thanks.
Bye. All right, everybody. It is 1:25, so let's go ahead and take a look at our schedule to figure out what we're looking at next. So we just had Savvis Realize Training Part 1. We are going to be going into our Microsoft Team meetings for synchronous learning training. We're going to do that again. We did it this morning, but we'll do that again. I see our viewer numbers are peaking back up here, so I definitely know you're coming in for that. So that'll be at 1:30 in just a few minutes. At 2 o'clock, we have remote map testing with Holly Sears from NWEA. And then we have Savvis Part 2, and that'll be with Jaron. And then at 3:30, to round us out, is the wonderful Michelle Shorey and her team doing Microsoft Teams for English learners. So, remember, you can still follow us on Twitter at JCPSDigIn, and when you tweet the awesome things that you and your students are doing together, please use the hashtag JCPSDigIn. Speaking of Twitter, if you see what our awesome Zone 2 leader, Kathleen Receiver, has posted here, we have a JCPS chat tonight going on at 7:30, and that'll be led by Mimi Ratliff. So tune in for that. The topic is back to school. It's our first one of the new year, and those are always awesome chats to be a part of. So definitely tune into that. Use the hashtag JCPS chat. If you don't have TweetDeck, that's I think the best way to do it, but that should be great. I know a bunch of us from Digital Innovation will be there. If you need any of these supports, remember you can go to jcps.me/NTI, go to the Teacher Toolkit, and you can find all of this stuff there. So we've got Teacher Backpack, we've got Curriculum and Instructional Frameworks, we've got National Quality for Online Teaching Standards here, we've got Realize, Gale, Literacy Footprints, Mastery Connect, Edmentum, and then we have support for our our digital tools, which are Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Meetings, Screencastify, Jamboard, and Read and Write. And remember that all of these videos will be recorded and broken up and placed on the JCPS Digital Learning channel. If you have not already subscribed, you'll see we're getting close to that 7,000 mark. We're at 6,480 something. You can go to playlists here, and you can see under Microsoft Teams meeting support or Teacher NTI 2.0 playlist or Family and Community NTI 2.0 playlist. That is where we will be posting these videos too, for you guys to go back and watch with the power of pause. So let's go back here, and we can see our team members are starting to file in here. So how's it going, Chan?
What's up, buddy? DJ Matty B rocking it out today.
Yeah.
Kicking butt and taking names.
Oh,
Thanks.
yeah. You know it. You'll notice we are all wearing the same t-shirt today. The awesome Elaine Abanetha made these shirts for us to say teachers can do virtually anything. And it's not been more apparent than after the past week of all the flexibility and adaptability that you all have shown in switching our synchronous learning tool from Google Meets to Microsoft Teams meetings. So in this next session, Kyle and I will be leading you through, and I'm going to post the link to our presentation in the chat. We're going to be leading you through how to create a Microsoft Teams meeting link, how to post that into Google Classroom in 2 different ways, and then some of the features that you can find on the web browser version of Teams meetings and on the app for Microsoft Teams meetings as well. Chan, you ready to get into it? It's like 1:29. I think we might be good to go. I appreciate everybody coming in. Please let us know if you have any questions. We have our whole Dig In team in the chat here ready to help you out and answer any of those questions you have, and Kyle and I will try to address them on video as we see them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Welcome, everybody. Again, as Matt mentioned, let us know who you are, what school or department you represent. We're glad to have you, and are, again, especially grateful and thankful for your flexibility as we've pivoted to this new synchronous learning tool. So I'm going to present my screen to you real quick here and go over just kind of the basics of if you're playing catch up and you're wanting to know how to set up a Teams meeting, and then I'll hand it over to Matt for how to get it into the classroom, and then I'll pull it in the driveway with those interested in downloading the app for a teacher issued TIP Chromebook. So I'll share my screen with us real quick here, and we should see this now. All right, so I kind of want to start from a little bit before this even, really. So if you go with me to your webmail is really where you're going to go first if you're going to set up a Teams meeting, and you need to access through that link. If I go to logins right here, and of course I'm going to go into webmail. Webmail actually is just that link takes you to the Office 365 web portal, if you didn't know that. And what it's going to do is, see where you normally get this screen where you can go into Outlook. What you really need to do from here in order to create one of these is go to your calendar. So I'm going to go to see all for me, and then I'm going to open up my calendar. And here soon we'll get to where we were in the slide deck. But this is important. Those of you that may not have accessed it this way before. So again, instead of going to webmail, you're just going to take a little detour and head over to the calendar through the web browser, okay, for JCPS. So now that we're here, we'll walk through real quick how to actually set this up. And let me see if I can get, last time I had an issue with my own closed captioning giving me fits. Maybe I'll get lucky this time. And it's telling me the same. Says it can't turn on my mic. Go figure. All right. So what you've got here is, once you visited the calendar, you can see here that you want to tell it that you need to create a new event up in the top left-hand corner. Really, the key thing to focus in on with this is that you have to do this in order to get that link that you're going to want to put out for your students to join you. So what doesn't really matter as much here is the date, the time, whether it recurs or not. Really, the crucial pieces of this are to go down here and select Add Online Meeting and select Teams Meeting. Give it a title. That would be something we'd recommend is to keep up with them in case you create multiples, and then save it. So maybe you'd say like, Chandler's fourth period math class, or something like that, save. So that is just for ease of being able to locate it in this next step. So once you've created that, you've not invited anybody, you've not done any of that. You've only kind of made a holding place for your team's meeting. Then you want to go back and find that newly created meeting in your calendar. So in my example, I found it, since I was making them immediately following, it showed up right over here on the right-hand side. And I could click into that. I could open the details to it, or I could have found it over here in my main calendar. But the point is you want to get back into the details of this event, because in order to affect some of the changes and flip some of the switches we're going to tell you about, you have to go to meeting options right here in the bottom. So once you've opened the details, you've got to choose meeting options before you share anything. So before you share a link or give this out, first things first, go into meeting options. And you'll see there's a lot of red and a lot of text here. And this was good guidance in case you saw this without hearing us explain. So this is right now where you land to affect those meeting changes. So you want to change who can bypass the lobby to only me. So that would mean that you are the only person that can jump straight into the meeting. So anyone else, in theory, would get kicked to the lobby, is what it's called, quote unquote. The lobby is like a waiting room. And then you as a teacher will get a dialog box asking you to accept or deny their ability to join you in the live meeting. Also, you've got who can present. You want to switch that to only me as well. Because if you leave everyone open as a presenter, not only can they share their screen, but they can get some of the controls that you want reserved for you, that Matt will talk more about here in a little while. So you've got to make sure that this screen looks exactly like it does on this screen grab. It's two options. My understanding is we're working to try to get these turned on this way by default, but in the interim, I would always recommend you double check, make sure they always say only me for both. So once you've done that, you're like, all right, cool. It's only me. I can only do this stuff now. You want to get that link so that you can share it with your classes. So back in that same area, instead of clicking down here on meeting options, you want to click join. You don't want to click it. You want to right click, or if you're on a Chromebook, double click, and it'll open a dialog box similar to this. And the option you want is copy the link address. So you don't actually want to click it. You want to copy the link address, not the text, the link address, so that you can paste that to allow people to join you in your meet. So from here, I'll turn it over to Matt and let him walk you through how to do that in the classroom. You want me to leave my slides up, Matt?
Yeah, if you want to just go through them, that's perfectly fine. So
Sure.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, so just to reiterate, if you go back one slide for me, Kyle. So you want to right-click where it says Join Microsoft Teams Meeting, or if you are on a Chromebook or a Mac, you want to two-finger click. So you take two fingers and you click the trackpad at the same time. We've had some people that have had issues getting that two-finger click to work. So if you can't, that's totally fine. Just click where it says Join Microsoft Teams Meeting, and then you can copy the URL to that meeting, and it'll work the same way as copying the link address. So those are the two ways of achieving that same thing. Copying whatever window opens is the same thing. So we are going to go to our Google Classroom after we copy that link. And this way I have you going through right now is putting the link into your stream on Google Classroom, but we know that there are some issues with that, so we're going to go through and look at another way after this as well. So on your stream, you're going to make a new announcement. Kyle, will you go back one for me? And you want to make sure that you're sharing it with your class, that meeting was made for. You want to have a message that says, hello, like here's our link to our Microsoft Teams meeting. We'll be using it for live or synchronous instruction. And you want to click where it says add a link there. So we click on add, and then we want to click on link because we're adding a link. So in the window that pops up after you click link, you're gonna paste that link in there either by using Command or Control V, or by right-clicking again and pasting in there. And then after that link is in, you click add link. That will take you here, and you'll see that the link appears as join conversation. So after we make sure it's for our students, we have a message, we have where it says join conversation, we hit save. Now if you look at the left part of this slide where my cursor is right now, you can see that I have a URL there for how to post this as material under classwork on Google Classroom, which is what we're going to talk about now. So if we go to the next slide, Kyle, So this is what it would look like for your students in the stream. They would just come here, they'd click on Join Conversation, and that would open up the meeting link for them, and they can click on Continue through Browser. But we know that your stream is going to start to get piled up. It's going to get pushed further and further down. So instead, let's go to our Classwork tab, if you're worried about that happening, and we're going to click Create under Classwork. And you see I named some of my things like Aardvark and Zebra and stuff like that. So when we click Create, that's going to ask us what we want to create. Kyle, you can go to the next slide. There we go. And we're going to click Material. So material would just be something like a syllabus or something like that your students could revisit all the time that you're not really planning on changing or collecting for a grade. I'm going to title it Microsoft Teams Meeting Link. And again, you can put a message in the description like, hello, this is what we'll be using for synchronous learning for the next 4 or 5 weeks, whatever, maybe longer. You're going to click Add, and again, we're going to click on Link, just like we talked about before, because we're adding a link. From there, we're going to... oh, did you go through 2, Kyle? I'm not sure. I thought I had an extra one. Yep, there we go. Nope, that's right. Okay. So we'll add that link in there. We'll hit Save, and then you can go ahead now, Kyle. Sorry. I also added my Microsoft Teams meeting link to a topic. So by putting it to a topic in my Classwork section, I can then move that topic up and down, so that way it appears at the bottom of my classwork or the top of my classwork, and nothing will push it from there. If you create a new topic and it puts it at the top, you can just drag Microsoft Teams meeting link and put it at the top of your classwork again, so it's very easy for your students to find it. And again, a few slides back, I believe on slide 11, I have a video, it's like 5 minutes long, that goes through exactly how to do that. Step-by-step live in real time. Okay. My colleagues in JCPS Dig-In, are you seeing any questions in the chat that we should address before I move on to getting into the meeting?
I think we are handling the questions. So if you want to continue, we're good.
All right, sounds good. Thank you all for helping out in the chat. And again, I will, really quickly before I move on, I will post the link to this presentation in the chat. That way you all have that again. So now let's talk about what it looks like when your students get into a meeting. They're going to click where it says Join Conversation, just like what we said. And you can do this too. It's probably the easiest way for you. Sometimes your meeting might not look pretty if you can't get the Join Conversation thing to appear. You can just paste the link into a post and it'll do the same thing. You can click on that blue text and it'll go there. So, students are always going to continue on this browser. The only time they would use an app would be if they were on an iPad, and they wouldn't have the continue on this browser option. But we want our students to continue on this browser, so they're going to click there. And when they first click on it, it's going to ask them to allow their microphone and camera, which they should do. You should also do this. All right, you can go ahead. So your students, after allowing their microphone and camera, will see this. So there's going to be a video box in the middle here where they can see a video preview, and there's going to be a spot for them to enter their name. Do not have them enter their name, because that will have them join the Teams meeting as a guest, which we don't want. The whole point of this is we want them to be verified and credentialed through JCPS, through their account, so that way we know who is in this meeting. So,
and just to be sure it's clear, so if they type their name, that won't automatically put them inside of the meeting, but it will put them in the lobby.
Yes.
And if you mistakenly accepted a guest from the lobby to the meeting, then it could be anyone. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're not doing that. Thanks, Matt.
Yes. So instead, you will see on this slide a big green arrow that is pointing to... I'm going to stop moving my cursor so that way the hang up button will go away there. It's pointing to sign in. There is a sign in button at the bottom here. We want our students to click on that. So they do that. It'll take them to where they can log in with their JCPS email and their JCPS password. They click sign in, and then it will allow them to enter the lobby. So when they're waiting in the lobby, they'll have the option to turn on their video and microphone. They also have the option to change what they'll use for their webcam and microphone. And then they'll click join now. So, just like Kyle said, after they click Join Now, they're not automatically put into your meeting. They join the waiting room or their lobby, and the teacher, you, get a notification that someone is waiting to join your lobby, and you can admit them in. All right, let's go ahead and see. So as a teacher, you will see this before you enter the meeting, and if you are using the app, you might have this background image thing here, you might not. You'll have the option for toggling your camera and your microphone and for joining as well. I've had some teachers email me and say that they were having trouble getting signed in as well, so if you haven't signed into your JCPS account, look at the bottom. There will be a little button that says sign in. All right, go ahead, Kyle. You can skip past that because I'm not talking about the app. All right, so when you're in the meeting, we can see what it looks like for you to admit your students. So you'll click on where it says participant list or lobby right here. But some of your other options that you have in your toolbar, and Russ Hockenberry and Rebecca Reynolds they've been posting these on Twitter all day, some different toolbar options depending on what version of Teams meetings you're using. So there's a camera toggle, a microphone toggle. You should have a screen sharing option here. And then most of you will have the 3 dots here for some additional options, which could be, depending on which version you're using, start recording. The app allows you to use live captions. There could be a background effects one if you're using the app. The end meeting function here allows you to kick everyone out and end the meeting. You'll also see there's a hand raise function, which you probably won't use. And then there is the participant list right here. That's those 2 silhouettes next to each other. And that is where you'll admit people and where you can mute and remove students from the meeting as well. All right, we can go ahead, Kyle. So when students are waiting in the lobby to come in, you will get a notification. So this is a test student that's part of our domain. So it says test student 3. Yours would say like Smith, John, if it was John Smith trying to get into your meeting. So I could click on view lobby right there, or I could click on the participants list, and it shows me who is in the meeting and who is waiting to come in. So you'll see the first person waiting in the lobby is a guest. And again, that's why we didn't want students to just type their name in and click join. We wanted them to sign into their JCPS account because we don't want our teachers to admit anyone to a meeting that's a guest. So any guest, we would click X. And any student that we could tell was on our roster, one of the caveats here is that it might, for the first time that a student joins your meeting, it might say out of, what does that say?
Outside of your organization.
Yes, outside of your organization. But if it's a student that you're expecting to be in your class and it doesn't say guest next to their name, go ahead and admit them in. So that's why it's important to have a roster or something with you as well. So remember, guests are a no-no. We want to admit our students in. So one of the functions your students will have is to raise their hand. That'll alert you. So if you go to the next slide, Kyle, when they click raise their hand, you'll see it pop up over the participants notification right there. And if you look at the participants list, you'll see a hand raise little icon there as well. Now that stays up until either you or the student that raised it remove it. So after you address their question, just make sure that one of you lowers that hand. So Kyle, if you go to the next one, some of the other options you have for your students from that participant list, you can make them a presenter if you're doing like some presentations in class. After doing that, you can also click on them and make them an attendee again, so you can change those permissions back and forth. You can mute them. So if there are multiple people in the meeting, you will have a mute all option that will appear for your attendee list. And we are currently working on, with Microsoft, getting a hard mute option as well. So students that are muted right now can unmute themselves, but it will be coming where you can mute them where they cannot unmute themselves. And then you also have the option to remove a student from the meeting. So this is why Teams is better than Google Meet for meeting security, is because when you remove a student from this meeting, they have to go back into the lobby to be admitted back in. So by removing a student, you are then saying, okay, now you get to wait in the lobby until I want you to come back in. So if it's someone being disruptive, or if it's someone that shouldn't be in there, they can't just automatically rejoin. They have to wait in the lobby until they are admitted back into the meeting. All right, one of the other functions is the screen sharing start and stop. So if you click that screen sharing tray, you'll have an option to share your window. And then if you want to close out of screen sharing, you just click the button again. And Kyle, I believe it's on to you.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, so if you, let's say your team meeting, this is an app. Great. Present that. All right, guys. So if you are a JCPS teacher on a district issued TIP Chromebook, well, that's a mouthful. This is for you if you're interested in the app. Okay, so if you want to be able to see up to 9 participants at the same time right now, the app on the Chromebook is the way to do that. So you can use the web browser, but if you use the web browser, you will only be able to see one participant that has their camera on and is talking. I think Microsoft AI currently chooses who you see. You may be able to go into your participants list and pin one or so people, but if you want to see more than one simultaneously, you can see up to 9 in the app on the Chromebook. So if you remember earlier, Matt was showing you the participant list. Whenever you click the participant list in the web browser, it pops up a little bar on the right-hand side. It lets you see an overview list while also showing you the meeting. The Teams app on the Chromebook takes you to a different screen to do that, but you can still do it. So let's talk about how to get the app. So if you click or find the Google Play Store on your Chromebook, it should look like this. Then you'll want to click on Microsoft Teams. Now, this Play Store is only available to the teachers. So if you're a teacher, you're the only people that can get to this. And then these are the only things within that you can download, one of them being Microsoft Teams. So you'll click on Teams and tell it that you want to install in the top right-hand corner. The install doesn't take very long. It's a pretty light install. This was actually developed for tablet and mobile phone applications. So, a few minutes most. Then you can open that up. And you'll see that it is then in your system tray on the Chromebook. You can actually pin that if you'd like to as well. After launching it, it'll prompt you for your JCPS email address. You'll want to enter that and click sign in. This is kind of grainy, but it'll give you an option to choose between your personal or work or school email. Of course, you want to choose your work or school email in this choice here. Then you'll get a couple of screens to burn through for next, and ultimately you'll wind up in this interface. So this is what Microsoft Teams meeting looks like on the app on a Chromebook. Again, we talked about the ability to pin that. If you double click with your mouse pad and then choose pin, it'll keep it up for you. So what I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of was if you are on a Windows PC or you are on a Mac, you can download a dedicated application, like desktop application, dedicated application for Teams. And with that product, you are able to view, I think, up to 49 participants in what they call large gallery view, or you can sit students virtually in what they call a virtual stadium view. So if you guys have seen that on the internet or on Twitter, that is due to the extra resources the computer has available to it if the app on a Windows or Mac is installed. Again, our Chromebooks are a little different. You can use the web or you can use the Play Store app, but that's going to be a different set of features than what you would get on a Mac or a Windows PC. The Windows PC has more of those view features. Our Chromebooks right now have this, but as Matt mentioned earlier, we're working diligently with the developers, engineers, and senior executives at Microsoft to bring some of these features out to you guys, and they've been great to work with, very responsive. So we're excited about that partnership. But those are kind of the ins and outs of the two. Again, with the dedicated app on the Chromebook, you're going to get the 9-person view. But there's a couple of other clicks to get around to the participants list. On the web browser version, you're going to have easier access to the participants list, but you're not going to see as many at the same time. So, whatever works best for you. But those are some options. If you have access to a Windows machine or a Mac, again, you can download the entire application, and there'll be a lot more features available to you that way. Some workarounds we had earlier, we had some say that they were going to join on multiple devices so that they could see multiple sets of students. You can do that as well if you'd like, if you have access to it and would like to do that. So we're all ears. We're in this with you guys, and we're excited to work shoulder to shoulder with you to figure out the best way to get synchronous instruction to our students. So, guys, any big questions pending in the chat that we can address?
It looks like some people are asking about the numbers of people that you can view on the different options. Could you go over that again one more time, Sam?
Sure. Yeah, you can access the web browser version on Windows, on Mac, on Chromebook, and that will be a standardized experience for you across them all, but you can only see one participant at a time right now if you view via the web browser on a Mac, a PC, or a Chromebook. And that is dictated by an AI algorithm that Microsoft has currently that pops up who it feels is going to be the person speaking. So if they have their mic open and their camera on and they start to unmute or they start to make some noise, it's going to probably flash over to them. However, since the Teams app on the Chromebook was designed again for mobile and tablet applications, they focused more on visuals. And so there is a grid right now of 9 that you should be able to see on the Teams app for a Chromebook in the Google Play Store. Now, if you are on a Mac or a PC, you would have access to the app from iTunes or Windows. And in those settings, you can leverage they call it large gallery view, or they call it virtual stadium view. And so those are 2 features in the dedicated app for those platforms. That's again, Windows and Mac, where you can see a multitude of folks at the same time. So those are kind of some of the differences. Again, well, we're with you. We're working with Microsoft closely to roll out some of these views quickly to you on your Chromebooks and different devices as we're able. So.
Okay, I had someone asking so Stacy Herp, I'm actually going to post a link in there for you into the channel. So her question was, where do I find the desktop app and how do I install it on Windows PC? So if you want to do that, you go to ak.ms/teams download, I believe. And I'm actually going to copy and paste that link just to make sure. So if you go to aka.ms/teams download, you will see that will take you to the Microsoft Download Teams, and it will give you the appropriate option for what you're on. So if you're on a Windows machine, it'll give you the download for Windows. If you're on a Mac, it'll give you the download for Mac. I'm not sure if it will give you the download for a Chromebook right there. I'm pretty sure you probably just still have to go through the Play Store for that one. But that link in there, aka.ms/teams download, is where you would go.
And another example of a feature set that you would get from following Matt's instructions to figure out what platform you're on. But if it's Windows or Mac, you would also get the background images available to you, one of which is a blurred background. And then there are other options on there for you too if you're on that platform. That does not work from an iPad or an iPhone or any of that. The blurred background does, but the other options do not. And it does not work at all from a Chromebook right now. Mm-hmm. So just heads up on some of those features.
Hey guys, one of the questions that popped up in the chat was about opening the link on a Chromebook using the app. So this is very specific only to those people. And I know, Matt, that you posted like that ugly, what I call the ugly link, where it was super long, versus using when you're posting in Google Classroom and you can use the link. Add a link, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm using the word link over and over again, so hopefully this is not confusing. But there does seem to be some difference between those two and using the app on a Chromebook. Because when I was playing with it today, when I would right-click on the link when you add a link, it would open in Teams, but not with the super long one that you just post in the stream.
So Jack, that would open in the browser when you'd open the really long link. Is that right?
Yes, the really long, ugly one would open in the browser. And if I right-click on the ugly one, the super long one, it was not giving me an option to use the Teams app, only in the one that was posted where you added a link. I don't know what the difference is, but that's what I was finding today. So just thought I'd share that. That was a question that popped up. So
okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Great.
I saw some other questions in there. I'm going to go back to these slides for just a second. On students signing in to get into their team meets. Let me click out of his comment right there, and we're going to go zoom into this. So it is not going to force students when they come to this page. It's not going to force them to sign in sometimes. So they might always have this option to enter their name and join now. We want to make sure that is never the case. So we are working to make sure that this sign in button down here is bigger. It's not going to force them to sign in. It's going to allow them to join as a guest. That's why we need to make sure our communication with our students is clear that we will not accept them as a guest, and they need to click on that sign in button in order to get into your meeting. So there isn't any forced sign in right now as far as I'm aware of, but we need to make sure that we are making sure that our students sign in rather than just coming in as a guest. So we're the forcing the sign in portion there.
Correct. Yeah, we've got to be diligent and make sure that we never allow that, and that we're always forcing that sign in. Even I had today a teacher, they were having that issue, and I said, well, go back immediately. I said, post a follow-up. Actually, Matt, they used one of your screen, that same screen you were just showing. They took a snip of that, posted that into the same classroom post and said, look at this image below. This is what you need to do. So by all means, use our material or make your own. But if you need to give students a visual, make sure they know to click that sign-in button.
Yes, so I am actually going through and pasting our presentation back into the chat now, and I also put that aka.ms/teams download in there as well for you, for those of you who are on Mac or PC, for you to have that as well. And, I mean, we totally understand how frustrating this can be to have to learn a brand new synchronous learning tool on the fly while you're trying to take care of 100 students, and we do sincerely apologize for the flexibility that we're all having to show here, but this really is the most secure way for our students to have synchronous learning now. The fact that they have to log in with their JCPS credentials for us to let them in, and that we can kick them out of a meeting, and they have to wait to get into a lobby, those are really the features that are pushing this tool as the front runner for what we're using right now. I saw somebody ask a question in the chat about can we go back to Google Meets, and we are a digitally agile district. We want to make sure that we are using the best tool for the job anytime. So we're not trying to push Microsoft or Google or Apple. We just know that Teams right now is the best one for the job, and if Meet catches up, then hopefully we'll have choice. But we know Teams is what we have to go with right now because it's the safest for our kids. So
absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
All right. It is 2:00. Hopefully our Dig In team can continue to answer some questions in there in the chat. I believe it looks like Holly is in here right now for our next session about map testing. So thank you to the Dig In team for being here. The 213 of you in our chat right now, thank you for being here. Keep sending us questions. Keep sending us feedback. We need it. It's the only way that we're going to get better with this tool, and the only way we're going to get better with this tool with our kids. So thank you so much. And again, we deeply, deeply appreciate your flexibility and willingness to grow in the past week or so. Alrighty, so it's 2:01. I don't want to eat into our next presentation anymore, so let's take a look at our schedule. Again, I will be posting the link to our schedule in here. These videos will be broken up and put on the channel, maybe late this afternoon, tomorrow morning at the latest. Coming up next, we have remote map testing with Holly Sears. She is with NWEA, and I keep saying NWA, and I apologize if I do that. Those are two very different groups. So, Holly, welcome to the Digital Learning Channel. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back today. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. I do have some slides to share, and you're going to have to remind me how to slide share through Meet. Do I do the top 3 buttons?
Yep, top 3 buttons, and then there should be screen share, and then you just select your window.
All right, perfect. Like you were saying, we are also agile on all of the platforms that we use. They're all the same, but they're all a little bit different. So remembering all the technicalities is just a piece of the puzzle. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I believe Susan Price, who is the Executive Director of Curriculum Design and Learning Instruction, is going to be joining me as well.
Awesome.
And she's going to assist me in the chat today, but until she gets here, I may need a little bit of assistance. All right, are we in presentation mode?
Yes, all you have to do is just hit that. You see that white box at the bottom? Just hit hide right there. Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. So like I said, I'm Holly Steers with NWEA. I've worked with JCPS and map testing since your all's implementation 4 or 5 years ago. I also work with about 15 other school districts all over the East Coast. Some a little larger than Jefferson County Public Schools and some just a little bit smaller than Jefferson County. So bigger districts on the East Coast, and we are working diligently to get folks ready for remote map testing. We had some success with remote map testing in the spring. We knew all schools shut down. Kids who tested, we had about 500,000 test events. So far this fall, we've had over 2 million map growth test events. So even though you all may be feeling a little heartburn out there, just know that you have millions of colleagues across the country who are managing to pull this off ahead of you all. And as we learn from them, I'm bringing information back to you all as quickly as we can. So first of all, a couple of updates have been made. Most importantly, probably everybody's eye goes to the bright red, is to the official fall map testing window. Part of this is to just give teachers and proctors a little bit more space and grace in prepping themselves and getting used to Microsoft Teams as the communication platform to be used during remote testing, as well as set their schedules and get into a cadence with students. That way we can have the most successful situation as possible. Right here at the very top link is a link to the map implementation guide. We'll make sure that this slide deck gets added to your all's agenda for today. And then also we have a link to the previous demonstration done by my colleague, Brian, a couple of weeks ago, if you want to revisit that. I'm not going to go live into the platform today. What I'm going to do is kind of give you an overview of probably one of the main resources, or kind of a one-stop spot, which is our Proctor slide deck. So like I said, we've had a lot of success so far with remote testing. It's not that different than brick and mortar testing on the Proctor side. So if you want to revisit that, I'm not going to go live into the platform today. What I'm going to do is kind of give you an overview of probably one of the main resources, or kind of a one-stop spot, which is on the slide deck. Turn my volume down.
Susan, do you care to mute real quick? We've got feedback coming through. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, can you still hear me?
Yep. Oh, yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're fine.
Can you still hear me?
Oh.
I want to distribute. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
The power of editing later on. Okay, so like I was saying, the key to success is going to be in getting your students ready, having your schedule in place, and being confident that you're not going to have things that we run into issues in brick and mortar testing with, like screen resolution errors and pop-up blockers. So we would recommend conducting some practice sessions prior to testing to prevent those things. And what we have here is an editable Proctor slide deck. And those first two slides are ones you would want to remove, and then you are at your leisure to do what you would need to do with this deck to meet the needs of how you're going to map test in your classroom. We know this will look slightly different from school to school, and within schools, grade to grade. As a reminder, we are only testing 3rd through 8th grade, with the exception of a few high schools who have opted in this fall. It's geared for proctors. It's made for proctors. The first few slides just tell you how to navigate the slides, and I'm going to dig in just a little bit on a few of them so that you have a little bit more insight and detail. When you go through these on your own, we would recommend viewing the whole thing outright. There's no right or wrong order for us to put in the transition slides, so you can make that work for you. There are some opportunities for you to fill in some slides and add additional information as needed. And there are slides to use with your students as you get them ready for test day. We're going to start with the test day slides. So make it your own. Introduce yourself to your students. Remind them why they do MAP. Since we're starting with 3rd grade, almost all of your students have tested multiple times, even if they didn't test this past spring. They've been testing since they started school in Jefferson County. And also an important reminder for proctors and teachers to remind students about MAP is that you're going to get a lot of questions right and you're going to get a lot of questions wrong. So reminding students that they're going to have a little bit of a struggle, but always to do their best effort on each question. Depending on if it's math or reading, the number of questions will vary. As a teacher, I always played it safe and I would tell them we're going to have around 53 questions. If they got finished early, they never complained about it. If there were more questions than I anticipated, then we were covered. The reading test in the upper grades could take longer than 60 minutes. That may be something for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers to warn students about and to keep in mind during scheduling. Reading takes stamina. The older kids have longer reading passages, and as much as we like to think that they've been reading every day since March to keep up their stamina, that's probably not always the case. So encourage them to read through the passage. Reading takes practice, it takes stamina. The brain is a muscle just like all the other muscles, and we have to work it as best as we can. If students need to take breaks during the assessment, then they would come off mute and tell their teacher they need to take a break. It's my understanding that chat features will be super limited in Microsoft Teams platform. And I want to be sure that during the test session, as the teacher, I have a way for students to connect with me somehow. If the best option is for the student to put their volume all the way down, like I should have done previously, and leave their microphone off and then click their microphone on when it's time to come ask their teacher a question. The proctor will then suspend the test until the student's ready to sign back in, and they follow the same steps to sign in as they would when they initially are confirmed into the test. Next question, top questions kids ask on the MAP test. Can I use a calculator? Students are not supposed to use a calculator unless it's provided on the screen. It's part of how the test measures a student's readiness to approach mathematics. So it's super important that we don't try to pull a calculator out. I was observing a test session last week, and the proctor gently reminded students that if they use a calculator and they do really well on the MAP test this fall, when we're back in school in the winter or spring and they don't get to use a calculator, the questions are going to go well beyond what their scope is and their readiness for the MAP test. So the harder the questions get, the more questions kids answer correctly, more difficult they get. So we need to keep kids right within their zone of proximal development. And like I said, if the calculator is supposed to be used, it will pop up on the screen. Students are going to see questions that they don't have an answer to. That's okay. Rule of thumb is if you take the time to read the question, to process the answers, you take a guess and it's time to move on to the next one. Can I change my answer to a previous question? You cannot go back. That's one of the differences between our platform and several other platforms is once you've made your answer, you move on to the next one. It's part of an adaptive test going up and down based on a student's readiness. How will students know when they're done? They will get a congratulations screen. They will also get their score on the screen. That's an option that Jefferson County has turned on. So it would also then tell them the score. And proctors, if chat's not available, then the student needs to come off mute and let you know that they're done. But if you're watching the proctor dashboard, which you probably are because you're not pacing around a classroom, then you can see how far students are progressing. So you'll have a pretty good idea of when students are finished. So what do you need during the test? They need paper, pen or pencil, and the device with the charger. One thing we are seeing happen around the country are kids starting the MAP test and the device shutting off in the middle of the test, which means the teacher then sees the student not progressing, This teacher then suspends the test and waits for the student to get back into the Teams meeting or whatever they're using and say, hey, I got kicked out. I need to get back in. And then the teacher is able to let the student back in. So Microsoft Teams will need to be open during testing sessions, which means we will be using no apps and iPads, and we will not be using the lockdown browser on the Chromebooks in the kiosk mode. We will be using a URL to take the test, preferably through Chrome, but on an iPad, Safari's essentially the same thing, so that works as well. If students do encounter a problem during the test, then type in here whatever's going to work best for that student to connect with you. And there are some classrooms in Jefferson County where the teacher may be asking, or the student may have access to a second device. Maybe in that specific classroom, in that setting, that'll work. Not every student's going to have 2 devices in Jefferson County. Teachers are very aware of that. So whatever's going to work best for them in that moment is what's going to work best for this particular slide. Do I need my parent or caregiver during testing? Chances are no, and the preference would be that they aren't around during testing, because it's so easy to just say, hey, help me with this one question. But when your test is following an algorithm of an adaptive test, the test on the back end is making some assumptions on whether a student's going to know a question or not. So the less help, the better during the test, but the more help preceding the test getting in there is what we would ask from a parent or caregiver, but also definitely not a requirement, especially with our older kiddos who are getting more technology savvy as the days go by. There's one thing that's good that's going to come out of this. It's going to be a technologically literate generation. So for a student to log in, I mentioned they won't be using the lockdown browser, which is what we've traditionally used in the past. Instead, they're going to go to test.mapnwea.org, and that's when the possibility of a pop-up could come up. Students can disable those. We're going to go through those processes of what could happen prior to testing, but the page looks nearly the same. The difference is that they can be working simultaneously on the MAP test while having the ability to open their Microsoft Teams as well. On the day of testing, we would recommend that you post the session name and the password, and that you put it on the slide, the session name and the password. I had a teacher friend who he liked the show Pardon the Interruption, and he keeps a chalkboard for his students right behind there with the message of the day, and he gets the session name and the password there. It's also an option. Those are all found on the Proctor console. So the student screens that they'll see as they go through the process of logging in are the same as the lockdown browser. So they click or begin typing their name on the drop down of the sign in. They select the test. Hopefully you have pre-assigned the test during your session setup. Then the computer will confirm that that's the right person, and then they follow the blue arrows. While they're waiting for you to confirm them in, the screen will come up with reminders of how to do your best during the MAP test. And then the students, once you've confirmed them, the students are in. At that point, you can watch their progress on the Proctor console. Common issues that are coming up. Oops, where's my test window? That's when we need to disable pop-up blocking. Within the PowerPoint, this is linked to directions by device. Super easy workarounds. It's basically the click of a button and it dissolves it. Jefferson County is also working on putting a policy in place to prevent that from occurring on JCPS issued devices. So hopefully some of that's eliminated. Screen resolution error with a Chromebook, same as it is in brick and mortar. Control-Shift-0 and refresh the browser. That's what most students are going to be experienced with. However, if they're on a different kind of device or an iPad, it looks a little different. Those slides are coming. If the session login information isn't working, go back and make sure they're not in the practice test. Make sure that you added them to the test session. That could be a error on the proctor side of not including a student. So if their names aren't in that drop-down menu, that's a little bit more difficult to work through. But if we double check our work, then all the students should be there. Given that the chat feature will likely be turned off at this time for most classes, we'll want to give students an idea of when the stop time is going to be. That way they know when you're going to shut it down, because you could suspend the test at that time, or they would know when to come back into the group to chat again, or turn their volume up, come back to the whole group setting. Setting up a stop time also sends mixed messaging that they have to finish in a certain amount of time. So a little clarity around, if you go over, that's okay, but this is when we're stopping for today. And if you exceed that time limit, then you'll move on into a makeup session situation. So the following slides are slides specifically for proctors to support you guys. These aren't necessarily slides that you would share with students, but in the instance that it does make sense, feel free to put them in other parts of this PowerPoint. Additional proctoring resources, more information than you have time to look at or care to know. Most of it's been condensed down into the other links that I've provided you. Specifically on the last page of the Jefferson County implementation guide for MAP, it's in the last page of that in an appendix section. Should you want to know more, or if you are someone who is leading your school as the MAP lead and you're helping additional teachers learn, then dig into these, lots of information. We have a proctor pre-test checklist. Great resource for proctors, step-by-step, how to go through, what do I need to do next, from scheduling to completing the test session. If you need help as a proctor or as a student, so chain of command, the student needs to first seek help from the proctor. We can do a lot of things to support our districts at NWEA, but one thing that we cannot do because of federal law is talk directly to parents. So we can't speak directly to parents or caregivers. That has to come through a district employee. So your school has a MAP lead, whether it's your building assessment coordinator or your AIC or an AP, your building has a lead. The lead, if they can't troubleshoot with you, then they can contact district support. Romanis Stroud is on the technology side of things. He's the MAP guru. So if it's a technology issue, please feel free to reach out to Romanis. Just know that parents cannot call into NWEA support, but you all are more than happy to if Romanis is tied up, or if you want to come straight to us. Okay, couple of troubleshooting specifics. We mentioned the pop-up and disabling the pop-up blocker. Super easy, a little bit different on every single device, a little bit different. There's directions by device listed here. Mostly on a Chromebook, you just right-click the little yellow bar at the top and allow the pop-up. Workstation readiness error. This has to do with the screen resolution. It needs to be just right for our items to work, especially those technology enhanced items like drag and drop, or when you're selecting multiple entries. Chromebooks, again, same in brick and mortar. Little bit different for iPads. Middle school, I know there's a lot of folks out there who will be using iPads. If you have a resolution error, you go to the settings section, click on Safari, click request desktop website and toggle to off. To disable pop-up blockers, settings, Safari, toggle, block pop-ups. Knowing those things in advance, doing those things in advance when you're going to the practice test, all are gonna make for a successful testing event. If students can't find their name when they sign in, like I said, if they have the wrong status or if you've forgotten to add them, here's a few options also for proctors if you want to read through those and refresh. Been a while for some of you. And then one thing we always like to call out is the glossary for the actions. Pause and resume can be used for breaks up to 25 minutes. If you use suspend, you're going to want to use test again. I don't want people to be afraid of the test again button. It goes hand in hand with the word suspend. The one I want people to be terrified of is the word terminate, because that's going to get rid of all information in the student's assessment so far, and that'll cause problems because we're limited to testing once per term per subject in Jefferson County, so that it involves a call to Romanus and him changing some settings on the back end, and just becomes a little bit of a mess. So we're typically going to be using pause and resume and suspend and test again. Pausing a student's test does not change on your end at all. The only thing that is any different is how the student tells you they need to be paused. The students at home and they need to go to the restroom, they're probably not going to ask you to pause their test. I've had some former students that would have, but most of them would just go knowing that if they come back. If a student lets a test sit more than 25 minutes, it will automatically move into suspension mode and then test again the next time they want to come in. If a test question isn't appearing or taking a while to load, there's a couple of options. Suspend and test again is my personal favorite. If a student's computer shuts down in the middle of the test, like I said, the battery's dying, suspend, test again. It's not going to hurt anything. If a student ends on question 14, they'll come back on question 14 with a new item. When students are finished, so if you say we're stopping at 3 o'clock today, when you stop that test session on that day, I cannot express it enough. Download session progress. That way you have a record of where your kids landed. Some people are really good and they'll take a quick screenshot and email it to themselves. This puts it all in a spreadsheet and you have right at your fingertips who tested, who didn't, and how you need to plan for your makeups. And that is all I have for now. So I'm going to stop my screen share and turn my volume up.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly.
And if there are questions that came in, I'm happy to answer those, whatever I can do.
I think most of the questions were answered by Susan in the chat. I think she got most of them. The last one I see here from Shannon Ballantyne, are we having less time to give the test now? That was to Susan.
So if it's like time, as in are we limiting them to 60 minutes, then no, not necessarily. You need to do what works for you. As far as the test window goes, we pushed it back a week and added a week on the end. So there's still a solid 4-week testing window.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I don't see anything else in there. I think Susan got most of it. So thanks.
Awesome. Absolutely. Just know that the links are all there. We'll get this added to your agenda page. Susan can add it to the map implementation guide, and we'll have that updated by the end of the day today.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Good luck out there. Y'all are doing great.
Thank you. All right, everybody. It is 2:26, so let's go through some housekeeping stuff before we move into our next session. So you heard Holly say that we will get those slides linked to our agenda here. Let me refresh. We may have them on there already. Who knows? It doesn't look like it. So if you did want to go back and get those slides for the team meetings for synchronous learning, though, those are linked on there now as well. Coming up next at 2:30, we have Savis back again for Realize Training Part 2. And I believe that's Jaren coming back for that. If you want to follow us on Twitter, at JCPSDigIn, we tweet, we retweet all the awesome things going on in the district that you guys tweet at us using the hashtag JCPSDigIn. And again, that stands for Digital Innovation. Tonight, one of the first tweets that you'll see on here is the back to school chat being led by hashtag JCPS chat. That is tonight at 7:30. My wife and I typically go sit out at the pool and relax and do those things together. She's a teacher at Iroquois, so we get to spend some T-Koi time doing the JCPS chat together whenever those happen. So we would love to have you there tonight to talk about the awesome things you're doing with your students and in your not in your building because your building is your house right now, but in your school. We'd love to hear about the great things going on. So please tune into that. Mimi Ratliff is the one leading that one. If you are joining us in the chat, please let us know where you're from, what you teach, and if you have any questions about anything going on. We have some of our awesome instructional people here to support. Susan Price has been here. I'm trying to think of who else we've had. We've had Stacy Justice, Robert Moore. We've had tons of people here to support, and I'm sure we will again for our Savas training coming up in just a second. If you go to jcps.me/NTI and go to the Teacher Toolkit, you can find our virtual learning schedule there. I'll also post it in the chat a few times during this upcoming session. You can also find links to this Realize training, some Gale literacy footprints, Mastery Connected Mentum, or you can see our core NTI 2.0 digital tools down here. Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams for synchronous instruction, Screencastify for asynchronous instruction, Jamboard, Read and Write. And we also have our departmental resources down here, so looking at great things like the ARE tool, or deeper learning resources, things for mental health practitioners, health services. So many of those awesome things can be found here. Ways to become digitally agile, so Apple Teacher Certification, Google Educator Certification, Screencaster Master. So all those things that'll keep you busy, but it'll help you be better at using some of these digital tools with your students. And then finally, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you are currently watching us on, JCPS Digital Learning. If you subscribe, you get notified every time we post new videos on there. And these videos today, from all of these awesome sessions all day long, will be broken up tonight and tomorrow morning, and will be posted individually, so you can go back and watch them with the power of pause. So, I appreciate you being here with us today. We are going to move into our 2:30 training, which again is Savas Realize Training Part 2, and that is with Jaren. Welcome back, Jaren.
Hi, thank you, Matt. It's in the chat, but I agree. You are just amazing. The energy and fun of this session has been really great for us. And if we were not in a pandemic, I would have been running out to 1 hour tees to get a shirt that said teachers can do virtually anything, because those are just amazing. And I wish I had one. And I agree that y'all are doing awesome things right now in these crazy times. So thanks for all that you do. And thanks for having us back. Hopefully most of you or some of you were able to join my colleague's earlier session, either this morning or about an hour ago she ended. And Sandra was able to give you kind of an introduction to using Savas Realize as a platform. And then I will spend about the next hour showing off a feature that we're just super excited about, because your work is challenging always. Your work is extra challenging right now. And so we are hoping that by showing you how Savas Realize integrates with Google Classroom, you will see something that makes your lives a bit easier, and hopefully makes your students' lives easier as well, because we're all on the same page that is what we would like to do. So let me share my screen right now and kind of walk you through, what we have to offer with the Savas Realize and Google Classroom integration. So we have not only this partnership with Google Classroom, but really this premier partnership, because when we say integrate with Google Classroom, we truly mean integrate with Google Classroom. You'll see that it's not a single point of integration. We're actually going to pull over your classes from Google Classroom into Savas Realize. We'll include your rosters of the students who are rostered in Google Classroom, and populate those classes for you with students within Realize, and also share data between the two systems. So as your students are completing work, completing assessments, any of the Savas Realize content or content that you've uploaded into Savas Realize, those scores will show in both systems. We will start by looking at Google Classroom. So we'll assume that you have access to Google Classroom, hopefully, or maybe are already using Google Classroom. Your students are familiar with Google Classroom, and you'll need to, be able to access those classes in Google Classroom. And there, I'll spend the time showing you how to connect Savvis Realize to Google Classroom. And this is where the magic happens, because that's where Savvis Realize hopefully just does the work for you and makes that connection to Google Classroom. And then you are good to go. I will remind you how to assign from Savvis Realize to Google Classroom. So if you were on the session earlier, Sandra talked about how to assign content out of Savvis Realize. And you will actually have the choice if you want that content to be assigned just within Savvis Realize, or if you want to use this Google Classroom connection, then the assignment will go to Google Classroom as well. So when I say you will assign, that means that as a teacher, you'll still access via Savvis Realize and navigate to the content that you want your students to see. But once it's assigned out to Google Classroom, that can continue to be your students' front door to content. If they're already accustomed to navigating your Google Classroom feed and stream with all of your other really great content, they'll get to everything from Google Classroom. Okay. Then I'll spend some time reviewing the student view. I want you to feel really comfortable, not only with what you'll experience as an educator, but what your students will see as well. We'll look at what scores look like. And then if I don't do a great job throughout the session, I'll make sure to come back to it at the end. But we really just want to highlight some tips and tricks that will make things easier for you as you use this integration. So this integration is not new to us. We actually we've integrated with Google Classroom for a number of years now, and we see just incredible usage across the country. And so with that in mind, that's why I want to highlight kind of some tips and tricks that we've heard from your peers across the country on what makes this great and how to make things just a little bit easier for you. All right, let me pull up one other screen here and just kind of give you the lay of the land of how I'm going to show this to you in a virtual environment. This is kind of fun for me too, because I get to, put on a hat like you're wearing, where we need to try and, teach a new concept or share a new concept in a virtual environment. So it's going to require me to have a few different tabs open to replicate what you would do during your instructional planning and as you're delivering content out to your students, and then what your students will see as well. So this first tab that I have open is Savvis Realize, and you got a bit of an overview of that earlier this morning. This is kind of a fresh start for this account with Google Classroom. We're not currently connected to Google Classroom in this account. The next tab that I have open, where I'll spend some time, is Google Classroom. So hopefully this looks familiar to you. If you are in this session, I imagine that you are a Google Classroom user or interested in being a Google Classroom user. So you should be familiar with this view. And if I don't remember to come back to it throughout the next hour, you'll know that I'm in my teacher view of Google Classroom, because I have this little M in the upper right-hand corner. This is I associated this Google with math teacher Jaren at gmail.com. So this is my teacher view here. I've set up a JCPS math class with 3 students in it. So JCPS math class, 3 students. And then I have a couple of other classes, an ELA class, a science class, a grade 5 class, all my different classes. What I want you to just kind of remember is that in Google Classroom, I have my JCPS math class, and then I have 3 students in this class, 2 of whom are named Chris, and then 1 student who is named Mia. Okay, so 3 students there. That'll be important to note as we do the connection. This third tab I'll come back to in a minute. You don't need to see that one just yet, but that's going to be the student view. I just wanted to make sure that I was logged in and let you know what you'll see from the student's view. Okay, so this JCPS math class, we know has 3 students in it. That's good. We're just making a mental note of that. And then I want to show you how you get started with the Savvis Realize integration with Google Classroom. And I have to say, just really, trust the system to do this for you and follow the prompts along the screen. But what you'll see is in the upper right-hand corner, you have your little person icon to show you your settings. So I will navigate to my settings. I see my name, I can change just kind of all of my preferences here. Now, as a teacher, you make the decision to link your your classes to Google Classroom. And once you do that, then your students' classes automatically become linked. This is not an action that the students in your class will need to do. This is just a teacher action. So at the bottom of my settings, I see account linking. I need to do this step just one time. So before you get started, click here to learn more about how Realize integrates with Google Classroom. I'm going to show you all of these things today, but if you get back into your login of Savvis Realize and decide that you need a refresher on what we covered today, just go ahead and click here. We put this here for your help, and you'll see the Google Classroom overview. You can watch a quick video of the teacher experience or watch a quick video of the student experience, access our frequently asked questions, all sorts of different help resources here for you. So you have that at your, literally at your fingertips or at the tip of your mouse click when you're ready to get started. Otherwise, just go ahead and get started and follow along with what you see on the screen. So I'll click Get Started. What the system's doing right now is looking through the various Google accounts that I've used on this device. And I like to show this screen because maybe both you as a teacher and even your students, if we're working on a shared device, you may have multiple email addresses or multiple users. Or even if you're not sharing your device, you may have your personal Gmail pulled up as well as your Google Classroom account. So the only step you really need to do here is remember which account that you're using for Google Classroom and associate that with Savvis Realize. So I can confirm over here on Google Classroom that my mathteacher.jaren@gmail.com is associated with Google Classroom. So within Realize, I'm going to find that account, and then it's going to ask me to allow Savvis Realize to connect to Google Classroom. And I don't want this screen to be scary to you because this is actually showing off all the great features of the integration. It's saying, are you sure you want to share your resources? Is it okay if your rosters are sent from Google Classroom into Realize? And the answer is yes. That's why we're showing this to you today. It's going to be a time saver for you. And better organization and consistency for you if these are connected. So I'll go ahead and allow that. Now, hopefully you remember from before when I was over here in Google Classroom, I had 4 classes. I had my JCPS math class, an ELA class, a grade 5 class, and a science class. So you can see already that just by typing in the email address that I used for Google Classroom, Realize already knows the name of my classes. So I'm going to do exactly what it tells me to do on the screen. Select the Google classes that you'd like to use in Realize. So which classes do you want to connect to Realize? Notice that this can be singular or plural. So you can do this, one class at a time, or you can select multiple classes, whatever works for you. I'm going to do this right now, just for my JCPS math class, okay? So I clicked on my JCPS math class, and now it wants me to add Realize programs to this class. So from here, you can select one or multiple programs that you want this math class to be able to view. And again, earlier today, Sandra talked through all of the great content that will be available on Savvis Realize in the 4 core content areas. So you'll have access to humanities programs and ELA and science and math, in addition to using it with links that you're already using. So if this is truly just your math class, then you could go in and grab, just the math program that you want to use. If this is a math and science class or a grade 5 class across the board, you could add more than one program to it. So you're not limited to a single program. You do whatever your students are using in that class. I'm going to stick with just math for the time being, and then I'm going to click to import the class. Now, it says once you've imported classes from Google Classroom, changes will show up automatically. So I'm going to trust that will happen and click Import Classes. This system to connect it is just full of alerts to let you know that you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing, you're making this connection happen. So you can now see of my 4 Google Classroom classes, 1, the JCPS math class has been imported, into Realize. So I could go in and finish my ELA class and my grade 5 class if I wanted to, or I can leave just one of my Google Classrooms connected. So I'm just going to leave this JCPS math class connected and then click finish. All right, let me show you something that's changed now. You saw this screen before. This is where I was in the upper right-hand corner and I had clicked on settings and it takes me back there. Now, when I scroll to the bottom in account linking, before this told me that this is where I go to get started and gave me some help. Now it reminds me that my Google Classroom account, mathteacher.jaren@gmail.com, is connected to Realize. So you can only have one Google Classroom account associated with your Realize account. That's by design so that there's not confusion there. But you can have, if you have co-teachers in Google Classroom, both teachers can associate that class with their Realize account. So that's supported there. Either way, though, this will just help you to confirm that you have done this correctly. I can see that it's connected. I can go back and import more Google Classroom or classes if that's what I need to do, or I can disconnect. And there's not really a reason you would need to disconnect. That doesn't help you to troubleshoot anything. The only reason really that you would need to disconnect would be if you decided this integration is not for you, so you're not interested in using it anymore, or if you accidentally selected the wrong Gmail account. So if I had more than one Google Classroom login and I didn't mean to associate mathteacher.jaren, then I might use disconnect and start over. But otherwise, it's a one-time thing. Just go ahead and get connected and you should be set. Okay? So now I'm going to show you how this worked in Realize. So nothing's changed in Google Classroom yet at this point. We had our classes in Google Classroom with the 3 students. The only thing that we've done so far has been within Realize. So now within Realize, if I go over to my classes tab, which you can get to right here along the top of the screen, hopefully you notice that one of my classes looks different than my other classes. So you can see right here, this Google icon associated with my JCPS math class listed right here. And this is even different. You can see this one that I did this morning that I had disconnected, this JCPS math and science class. I had to name it just a little bit different. It's not connected to Google Classroom anymore. I disconnected that one, but this one is indeed connected. It lets me know that it was updated at 1:41 p.m. And just keep in mind that I'm Central Time over here. So this is updating in real time. This isn't an hour ago your time. And you can see it right there. So the class came in, and if I click within Realize into my students and groups, you'll remember that in Google Classroom, I had 3 students in that JCPS math class. I had 2 students named Chris and 1 student named Mia. So those students came in to Realize as well. So everything that we've done so far is connecting Savvis Realize to Google. But we, meaning me, I didn't really have to do anything except for to enter my Google Classroom credentials and pick which classes to come over. The system's going to automatically do everything for you beyond that. It's going to automatically pull in that class with the appropriate students. Okay. Now, these alerts here, we can see that the first student, my first Chris number 1, he's actually Chris 4 here, he's connected. That means that he's gone into Google Classroom at least once before and accessed a Savvis Realize link and allowed it to connect. I would expect that the very first time you do this integration, for all of your students, you would see this alert that says that they need to connect because they haven't activated their integration yet by clicking on one of the links. And literally the only thing that they need to do to activate their connection is to click on the links that you're going to assign out as a teacher, the content that you assign out. So let's imagine that the first thing that you do is share a link to a quick quiz or something to your students. The moment that they click on that quiz, then they'll get a message that they need to connect, and it will get them connected. Okay. So the step that I showed you before where you went up to settings and connected your classes, that is just a teacher step. It only needs to be done one time, and that's it. Okay. As long as I'm over here in my classes, I'll give you a couple of tips and tricks. any of these classes that have the icon here mean that these are the classes that are connected to Google Classroom. So any assignments that I create in this class will be shared both within Realize and within Google Classroom. These classes that do not have the Google Classroom icon are not associated. So you may want to remove those classes so that it doesn't cause any confusion. So for example, as I was demonstrating this morning, I created this JCPS math and science class, and now I have two really similarly named classes that might confuse me later. And I'm no longer using this class. I don't need it. So just like with the earlier, Sandra explained that we don't have the concept of deleting assignments, and we don't have the concept of deleting classes. We don't want you to do anything that you might later regret or decide that you need. So in order to stay organized and avoid confusion, you can always hide classes that you're not using. So this class is not connected to Google Classroom, and I don't want to accidentally create an assignment in that class that I can clearly see is not connected to Google. So I'll hide that class. It will remind me that my class is now hidden from my view, but I can unhide this class at any time, either by quickly hitting this undo, that will go away if I don't get it, quickly, or the next time I come in, I can always go to my hidden classes and decide that I do indeed need that JCPS math and science class and unhide it. So you're not making any permanent decisions there, but I do think that it's a helpful tip to go ahead and get rid or hide some of these classes that you're just not using, so that you can, if you do want to keep everything within Google, that you stay really focused on that Google Classroom class. Okay. Now, things like your student scores and assignments that are shared between the two systems, that's going to sync automatically. Realize knows to make that call out to Google to sync up those assignments and sync up those scores. So you don't have to sync with Google, but you can sync with Google if you need to see some updates right away in Realize. So let me show you what I mean. This over here in Google Classroom is my JCPS math class. Let's say I need to change this class for some reason, and what I need this to be is my, this is now just my first semester class, okay? So what I'm doing now is just changing the name of my class in Google Classroom. A simple update. Google Classroom now says it's JCPS math class first semester, but I'm over here in Realize and I don't see that reflected just yet. So you certainly can hit this sync button to say, hey, Realize, you didn't catch that update. And now I get a message here that it's successfully synced, and it's now in Realize called JCPS math class first semester as well. Okay. So you saw that successfully synced. It is possible for a number of reasons that you might get a message that it did not successfully sync. And there's a number of reasons that something like that could occur. So you can certainly, always try again later, go back and see if you can see any reasons that you might have some errors, or look at any of our help documents, or give us a call and we'll help figure out what might be going on. But most times you'll just go ahead and sync with Google. It'll look for whatever change that you made, and then you'll see it right there. All right. So anything that I've shown you so far is taking content or taking data of some sort from Google Classroom and pulling it into Realize. So we pulled in this whole class, JCPS math class first semester. We made sure we knew the correct people. So now these two students named Chris and student Mia, they're both in Realize as well. Okay. So the next steps though are going to show you how to get any of that great content that's available from any of the programs in Realize, or anything that you're creating in Realize. How do we get that out to your students in Google Classroom? Okay. So let's imagine then that we're ready to do that. So we're logging from a teacher's perspective. You're still starting this workflow in Realize because you need to navigate to that content that you want your students to be able to see. So I will do a quick browse here, and really you can find any content that has this assign link. So if I want my students to take this online placement test, I certainly can. I'm going to do something just a little bit shorter than the online placement test so that you don't have to watch me take a super long test today. So I'll go in and find something quick. But before I find something quick, and I just want to reiterate this in case you weren't able to catch Sandra's section earlier, is that as you're navigating this content, you can filter to only show the resources that are sort of vetted for distance learning, so that you're finding resources that make sense to assign out during this time. There certainly are some resources in our program that are better served up when you're face-to-face with your students and walking around the classroom. So, just note that toggle is there along the top to really help you to ensure that you're finding content that you really want your students using in this time. This icon here represents the same thing. So now that I've filtered for that, every asset has that icon, and I can click on it, and it reminds me that this item is recommended as a resource for distance learning. So I feel good about this. I feel good about this multiplication as repeated addition quick check, that it's good for virtual learning. And then this icon tells me that this item is hidden from my students and they can't see it. But once you assign this item, your students will be able to see it. So that's by design, because we certainly wouldn't want your students to have things like assessments ahead of time unless you want them to have access to that assessment. We want to give you that control as the teacher to decide when they should see that. So I'm going to assign this out, but before I do that, I'm going to click in and check this resource. So Sandra gave that as a tip earlier, and I think it's a great best practice. This is a quick check, multiplication as repeated addition, and I just want to see what my students are going to see. So here's multiplication as repeated addition, and then I can click through and see that this is just going to be a quick 5-question assessment. Okay, great. I have decided that's absolutely something that I want my students to see. So I'm going to use this assign button. And assign will take you to this screen that, again, you may have seen earlier. And I'm just going to give my students, today to complete this. I'm super tough as a teacher, but also I know that it's just 5 questions. So please be sure to complete this quick check today before you sign off. Okay, so I gave it a start and an end date. If I'm not happy with the name that Realize calls it, you're welcome to change it. Gave my students some instructions, but now I need to go over and enter a class, group, or student name. As I start to type, it's going to do a think ahead. So I just put in the letter C, and anything that has the letter C is pulling up here. I have the option to assign this out to my entire class, so my JCPS math class first semester, or to any students, individual students. So your decision as a teacher, is this a resource that all of your students in a class could see or should see? Or is this a resource just for a specific student? Now, Realize actually supports assigning this out to groups of students as well, meaning more than one student at a time. But Google Classroom doesn't support that feature. So when you're using the integration, your choices are to assign this out to a class or out to an individual student. We can't support the group feature because it's not supported in Google. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with the entire class. I could also give it just to Chris, like I said, but I'll give this to my JCPS math class first semester. And this is a good example of why you might want to hide classes that you're not using, because if you don't want to use that April math class that's not connected to Google Classroom, I don't see that icon that it's connected, you might accidentally click at it at this point, but if you hide it, then you don't see it there. So that's why it's a good tip to hide classes that you're not using, just so you don't clutter your drop-down menus. All right. So again, I mentioned that Realize is full of messages, kind of confirmation messages, and I appreciate that as I'm navigating through something new, because it kind of lets me know what I've done and reminds me of what I did and if I did it successfully. So I'm sure that that's what I wanted to do. So multiplication as repeated addition quick check, and when I click assign, it's going to let me know that your assignment was created in Realize and will appear in Google Classroom soon. Okay, so that message pops up and then disappears quickly, but I now know that multiplication as repeated addition has been assigned both in Realize and in Google Classroom. Okay, so let's check that. Let's be sure that that happened. So I'm back in my classes. I see my JCPS math class first semester. If I click into assignments, you can see multiplication as repeated addition, quick check was assigned. So confirmation, that was done correctly. Understandably, 0 out of 3 students have completed this assignment. Chris, and Mia have not had a chance to log in to complete this yet. And then I set this. You saw me today set the due date, and it will default to complete this by midnight today, unless I would have changed this. So confirmation then that this was created in Realize. But the message told me that this assignment was created both in Realize and in Google Classroom. So let's check to make sure that happened as well. I'm headed on over to Google Classroom again, my JCPS math class first semester. Should have given this a shorter name since I need to say it so frequently. And then keep in mind, I'm Central Time here. You can see right within my stream, Jaren from Savvis Realize posted a new assignment via Savvis Realize at 1:56 p.m. So 2 minutes ago, when I did that assignment within Realize, the assignment shows up both in Realize and in Google Classroom. Okay, this is math teacher Jaren's view here. So this is my teacher view. And I can, click on this and see again that three students have this as an assignment, but they haven't turned it in yet. And double check what this is going to look like for your students. Here's the multiplication as repeated addition quick check. And then if you remember, I typed in as instructions within Realize to please be sure to complete this quick check today before you sign off. Okay, so it pulled in to Google Classroom. I see that as a teacher. And now I want to understand what this will look like for my students. So I haven't been to this third tab that I have open just yet, but I'm going to open up my third tab here. And this, if I hover over this Google Classroom account, you can see that this is student Chris. So in this third tab, I'm logged in as studentchris4@gmail.com. This is a student who is in my JCPS math class in Google Classroom. And he doesn't really need to know or care if he's in my class in Savvis Realize. All he knows is that he's been doing work with math teacher Jaren in Google Classroom, and he'll continue to do work with math teacher Jaren in Google Classroom. So I did this morning at 9:54 and 10:13 a.m., but you can see since then my stream was updated. I didn't click anything unique in Realize. I didn't click sync or anything else. This is just happening automatically. And at 1:56 p.m., again, Central Time, Jaren from Savvis Realize posted a new assignment. I'm the student now, so I'm going to click into this. I see that I need to complete multiplication as repeated addition, and it says to please be sure to complete this quick check before you sign off today. Okay, so Chris, this student needs to do his work. He's got an assignment that he needs to do by midnight tonight. Luckily, it's only 4 questions. Your students will always get this screen that will tell them that they're being redirected to Savvis Realize. They don't have to wait for the 10-second countdown. They can click to take me there now, but they will get this screen. And I like to show this screen during presentations, especially in today's world, because this screen is like what you saw from a teacher's perspective, where you, Chris, as the student, needs to make sure he selects the email, or excuse me, the email account that he uses for Google Classroom to make sure he's able to access his content in Savvis Realize. And if Chris were working on his own device and not a shared device and hadn't logged into anything else, then he might only see his name here. But if he shares his device with a sibling or a guardian who's also doing some work from home, he might see a lot of email addresses here. So simple step, but I don't want to, I don't want to just click through it. I want you to know that it serves a purpose. So Chris has started in Google Classroom as he always does. He's now accessing multiplication as repeated addition within Realize. So here is the link to the actual assessment, but he gets the instructions as well, and as well as the reminder that it's due today by 11:59 p.m. So let's go ahead and take this. And I do this on purpose and only give myself 3rd grade math so that I can hopefully get a couple of these correct and maybe some incorrect as well. It's only 5 questions, so bear with me. This is Chris. He's going to take his Realize assessment. And I should point out that you can modify these as a teacher as well. We do support the ability for you to customize the content that's in there. So I left this as 5 questions. Maybe 5 questions doesn't work for you and you'd rather add or remove items. You're certainly welcome to do so, but I left this as is. If Chris needs to hear this read to him, he can.
Which has the same value as 2 times 3?
All right, so which has the same value as 2 times 3? I think 3 plus 3 would equal the same. And then I can see something about, a bag contains 2 apples and there are 4 bags. So that looks like a multiplication question. And then this question this is multi-select, both the addition equation and the multiplication equation that represents this picture. So I need to multi-select. D, maybe not that one. And then let's go ahead and get one wrong, so we can see how this auto scores. So we'll select A for that answer choice. And then this is drag the equation to match each situation. So this looks like 5 groups of 6. This looks like 3 groups of 5. This looks like 4 bags of 5 marbles. So hopefully that's 2 cartons of eggs. Okay, so I'm done with my test, completing the test. So the system says, review your progress, Chris. Make sure you've answered all the questions before submitting, and then click submit test so your teacher can see it. Chris answered all 5 questions. He can go back and check his work to make sure he answered how he wants to answer. But when he's ready to submit his test, he just follows the instruction there and clicks submit test to turn it into the teacher. And you can see here in Realize that student Chris got an 80% or 4 out of 5 points. It's letting him know that he needs more practice with, shocking, multiplication as repeated addition. That was the name of this quick check. But that's how these quick checks are designed. They're really designed to focus on a particular skill on these 5 questions. That's what it's a quick check for. But he can go in and see that he answered questions 1, 2, and 3 correctly. And he can always go back and see, okay, question 4 was wrong, and he got that incorrect, and he selected answer choice A, and now he realizes that maybe it should have been answer choice D, and go and do that work. Either way, the point of showing this to you is that we know that success. He completed this assignment and he answered 4 out of 5 questions correctly in Realize. He sees that. Let's go check out what he sees in Google Classroom. All right, I didn't even have to click a refresh or anything. I'm just over in Google Classroom as Chris, and you can see, I'm over here, student Chris. He just took that multiplication as repeated addition, quick check, and he got an 80% correct. So he sees right away that he got that 80%. That's by the time he goes back to Google Classroom, because he's done. I'm going to X out of this. I don't need Realize anymore. I'm done with my Realize assignment. Chris sees, as a student, he sees right away that he got that 80% correct. Same thing for the teacher. I'm just over here as the teacher now. And if I go to student work, now I can see that 1 of my 3 students have turned it in. So it's graded for student Chris, and it's only been assigned to my other 2 students. They haven't completed it yet. And again, the teacher sees that score. He answered 4 of 5 questions correctly, so he got that 80% or 80 out of 100. Okay, so it's going to appear there. It'll appear over in your grades too, if you prefer. This view, you can see that it's over here today, this multiplication as repeated addition quick check, and not surprisingly, the class average is an 80%, and Chris got that 80% or 80 out of 100. Okay, so what I've shown so far does show you how the content shares out to Google Classroom. So that quick check was just becomes available as a link for the teacher and a link for the students. And the scores share as well. But again, I want to make sure I'm, giving you tips and tricks along the way. If you're only looking at the grades in Google Classroom, then you see that overall score for the student. but there is a deeper level of data analysis available for you within Realize. So depending on the type of assignment, it might be fine for you to only know the total score for the student. But there's some really great features within Realize that will allow you to look at your data in a more robust fashion. So let me get out of here as the student and sign in as the teacher again. This is just me going back to Realize as the teacher. And if you remember, the assignment appears both in Google Classroom and in Realize. So now when I'm back in Realize, I can see that that multiplication as repeated addition quick check was completed by one student. We know that already. And not surprisingly, the average is an 80% because that's what the one student got on this assessment, okay? So I'm just clicking on that assignment right now. And you have the option to look at data for that assignment within Realize as well. And this will be a little bit wimpy because I only took the assessment as one student or the quick check, but you probably don't want to see me do this as multiple students today. So, but I'll show you kind of the data that you get in Realize so that you can make the decision if you're just looking at scores in Google Classroom or if you also need to look at some of the data within Realize. Okay, so the first thing that you see, this happened today, 8:31 multiplication quick check. And this is similar. Chris got an 80% or 4 out of 5 points. On this first screen, what you'll see is the standard to which it was associated. So you don't see that within Google Classroom. And again, these quick checks are really designed to focus on that's one skill or standard. So depending on the length of the activity, there may be more than one standard listed here. But what's nice about this is that from here, when I click on the standard code, I don't have standards memorized by their codes. So I can click in and see that this was about interpreting products of whole numbers. And if I want to find additional resources associated with that skill, I can click this link and Realize is going to call out to all of the content that's out there, either just kind of natively within Savvis Realize, or you can do that search for OpenEd or create your own content. And this would be something then that, based on how your students were performing on this skill, maybe you want to assign them some additional work. Maybe they need this practice buddy or something like that. And we'll do that again later as well. But it's nice to kind of, take that teaching cycle full circle by looking at your data and tying it back to the next steps in your instruction. Beyond just the standards analysis, you can also see a question analysis. Keep in mind that only Chris has taken this test, but I like this because your time during remote learning or distance learning is just so precious when you do have the opportunity to connect with your students. And so if you wanted to do something like review how your class kind of performed on an assessment or on any sort of activity, you may want to spend some time highlighting the questions or things where your students had some trouble. So I can easily see that question 4 was most challenging for these students, and I can click on question 4. And as the teacher, I could see the language of the question, and I could go student by student to see how Chris answered it. And then when Mia completes this, I can see how Mia completed it and all of the other students in my class. So you really get kind of that deep understanding of how your students are accessing and performing. Okay. So that's the question analysis. We also have a student analysis. And what this is going to do is give you a list of all of the students in the class and then how they performed on each question. Again, only 5 questions. But this also will give you an idea of how, Chris is performing compared to his peers in the class, and whether Chris, seems to struggle at the beginning, middle, or end of questions, or if I just really wanted to focus on Chris and which questions he got right or wrong. And then the final thing is this performance analysis, and this will help you to create kind of groups of students based either on their overall score on this assessment or on a particular standard that was associated in this assessment. And you can choose the breakpoint that works for you. This will default to a 70%, either on a particular standard or on the overall score. And when you click Show Performance, as your students complete this, the students who hit less than 70% would be over in this left column, and the students who are above 70% will be over on the right-hand column. And the nice part about this is, again, completing that teaching cycle, because we have the links to assign resources if these students are maybe ready for some enrichment, and we can assign some resources over here to a different group of students who maybe need some remediation on that particular skill. And across the board in Realize, we really want to kind of put the power and decisions in the hands of the teachers. So that's why we allow you to do things like add your own content and create your own links and share things like that. But even with grouping students, you can decide that this doesn't work for you. So we're trying to help you by automatically grouping the students based on the breakpoint, but your students better than the Realize platform knows your students. So this isn't locked in. If you're unhappy with how this grouped your students, you would certainly be welcome to put students where you think that it makes sense. Okay, so if we just have decided then that maybe these students, rather than the entire class, could benefit from, like I said, enrichment or remediation, when I click into that, it's going to find me the resources that make sense there. And I have that option to make sure that it's a good piece of content for distance learning. So make sure I'm going to go ahead and enable that. And, maybe I want something. I'm teaching third grade. This was my third grade work, but maybe second grade makes sense. So I could filter by grade or whatever it might be. But either way, once you have what you like, I can see that. I like this one. This Practice Buddy might be a good one. Oh, let me find a Practice Buddy real quick. Wrong click. That's okay. It'll take me to the same place. All right, so let's imagine that I like this Practice Buddy. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's a third grade one. And this is something that I want to assign out. He needs this fluency practice. So I'm going to assign this out from this screen just to show you that this is always going to work in the same fashion, that any place where you can access this Practice Buddy or Just Chris. I'm only changing this so you can see this in a demonstration. I probably wouldn't change the title for Just Chris, but I'm going to go ahead and give this to my student's name, Chris, over here. I'm double checking that icon, connected to Google Classroom, and I'll click on Assign. And now my assignment was created in Realize and will appear in Google Classroom soon. And, same thing here. So I now have, my stream was updated over here as Chris in Google Classroom, and he has access to that Practice Buddy. But the other students in the Google Classroom class are not going to see that because I only assigned it out to Chris. Okay. So that's really it for the Google Classroom integration. I'll just do like a quick reminder of what I've shown you. When you're ready to get started, go ahead and click into your settings in the upper right-hand corner, scroll to the bottom, and follow the prompts under account linking. So it's at the bottom of your settings feature. And that's where I had that before. I was linked to mathteacher.jaren. I had the button to get started with my Google Classroom integration and a quick link to any resources that were there. And I can always go back and import more classes if I want to try this with one class first to make sure that I'm comfortable. But once that's set, just remember that your Google Classroom classes will appear in your Realize classes, and they'll have the designated Google Classroom logo next to it to keep it really, kind of clear for you. And then anything within Realize that allows you to assign it out to students, so you need to look for that assign button. When you're assigning it out to your students, then it's going to just automatically appear over here in your Google Classroom stream. Okay. Once you leave today, if you decide that Jaren covered way too much and wasn't clear and you need some help, just go ahead and click in the upper right-hand corner, and you can get help for this page to understand kind of a contextual help you to understand what how to navigate the particular page that you're on. Or you can, just go ahead and type in Google and see, all the different resources that we have that might help to answer your question. And I'll highlight a few of those as well to kind of, wrap things up here for my session. But I'll open these up as takeaway links for you as well. I know Sandra talked about the power of My Savvis training. Please let that be your friend. That's where you'll find all sorts of helpful resources as you navigate both Savvis Realize programs and the content. But this particular link is about Savvis Realize with the Google integration. And what I like about this is that these resources are, you can see what type of resource it is. So depending on your learning style, maybe you appreciate that it's a document or appreciate that it's a tutorial if you'd rather watch a video. You also can get a reminder about the teacher experience and the student experience, because you need to be able to support your students through this. And so if you need to understand their experience, or maybe just want to share this video out with your students and their parents or guardians as well, so that they feel really comfortable with the integration, then you'd have links for that as well. So those are available for you. I showed you the Savvis Realize help that's always available to you in the upper right-hand corner. And then I will imagine that based on today's session actually being hosted on YouTube, that y'all are super comfortable with YouTube as well. So we do have a YouTube channel for Savvis Learning with a playlist kind of specific to Savvis Realize. And this is nice because you can get an idea on how your peers in other districts are using Savvis Realize, and then also like some tips and tricks from the Savvis Learning team. And so maybe you want to focus on how to use Realize during distance learning, or what it looks like for teachers or for parents and students, or just go back and check out this playlist that will cover everything that I've covered today in these bite-sized clips. You can see this is not overwhelming. This is, these videos are not something that you need to dedicate your entire day to. It's just going to help to remind you what's going on with the teacher experience and the student experience, so you don't have to have everything memorized that we covered today. All right, so that is really it for me today. I will stop sharing for just a moment, and I know that my awesome colleague, Stephanie Daniel, who actually created a lot of those videos, I think she's been manning the chat for me and probably answering a lot of the questions, but I might just pause for a moment to see if there are any questions that came in that I wasn't able to cover.
I haven't seen any. I think that Stephanie's been able to answer pretty much all of them in the chat. So thank you, Stephanie, for being awesome and taking care of those questions for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie, for handling that for me. I didn't have any doubt. So thanks for your time today, JCPS team, and for all your questions and engagements. And, good luck. We're really excited for you. So we hope this works out really well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, everybody. So it is 3:20. We have about 10 minutes before our last session for the day starts. So if you're in the chat, please let us know where you're from, what you teach, and if you have any questions. Let's go ahead and take a look at this schedule here. So we just got done with Savvis Realize Training Part 2. I'm going to refresh and see if there's any new links or anything up here. Coming up at 3:30, we do have Michelle Shorey and her team talking about Microsoft Teams for English learners, so that'll be awesome. And she has her presentation link there as well, so I will put this schedule into your chat for you. That way you have access to that. So let's talk about some other things. Tonight we have the first JCPS chat of the school year, starting at 7:30, using the hashtag JCPS chat. So we would love to see you there and interacting on the chat with that. I think Mimi Ratliff is leading that one, and she would love to have you, and so would we. I think a lot of the JCPS Dig In team will be there. Dig In, of course, meaning digital innovation. You can follow us on Twitter at JCPS Dig In, and we will try our best to retweet and spread the love and awesome things that you are doing with your students and colleagues throughout the district. When you do tweet at us, please make sure to use the hashtag JCPS Dig In. That way we can find those things easily, and we can, again, share the awesomeness that we know you are doing with your students from a distance. If you go to jcps.me/NTI, that will bring you here to our NTI 2.0 support page. If you go to the NTI 2.0 Teacher Toolkit, you can find our schedule by clicking on the live virtual learning schedule there. You can also find the complete NTI 2.0 Teacher On Demand playlist as well. A lot of the other things we have on here, we have the curriculum and instructional frameworks. We have the Teacher Backpack, which is a one-stop shop for you that my coworker Kathleen and Susan Price and some people on her team have been creating continually. You can see we do have some of the training link for that Savas Realize training on there, and we will be breaking those videos apart and putting them onto the JCPS Digital Learning channel for you. So if you go to our channel, which you're currently on, and hey, we've gotten at least a few more subscribers because we're up to 6,490 something now. If you do want to subscribe, you will be notified every time we post a new video or we go live, which is better for you, so you can go back, watch these videos with the power of pause. These videos that we've had today, so all of our sessions, both Savas Realize trainings, the awesome Minecraft EDU session for Chromebooks that Jim Unger led earlier, the session with the School Connects team, and then the session that myself and Kyle Chandler led earlier, as well as the session with Holly Sears from NWEA about map testing. All of those will be broken up and put onto the Teacher NTI 2.0 playlist for you to go back and look at later. You can see we have about 62 videos on here that you can go back and look at. So if we click on View Full Playlist, you can see we've got the 5 basics, Teacher Backpack, which we talked about earlier. That link goes to that. Jamboard for interactive whiteboard. So if you haven't used Jamboard yet with your students, it is a really awesome whiteboard tool. We've got Screencastify for asynchronous learning. As I'm sure you know, the district has a Screencastify Unlimited license. We've got some stuff in here about literacy footprints, Gale for educators and students, Edmentum, Mastery Connect, rubric and assessment design. So these videos were all done during the few weeks leading up to NTI, but they are on there for you to go back and watch at your leisure. Additionally, on the jcps.me/NTI Teacher Toolkit website, we do have some instructional videos on Google Classroom and how to best use that. Microsoft Teams, we've been inundated with that lately, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and we're trying to answer them. So you can find some on-demand videos there. We have, again, Screencastify, Jamboard, Read and Write. No, excuse me. I'm trying to think. I had something else that just came into my mind, but I don't remember what it was at this point.
I admire that cough into the sleeve. That was good.
Thanks,
You're following the protocol.
Yeah, you gotta go away from people, and it's gonna be weird to be in a world with other people around at some point.
I know.
How are you today, Michelle?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
On that document, it just has my name, but I have there's an awesome team of us. There's 5 of us. So I don't know if you can edit later and add my friends in, but they're pretty awesome too.
We'll put them on there. So while we're waiting another 5 minutes, let's go ahead and take a look back at our schedule, and we will put the rest of Michelle's team on there. But we kind of want to talk to you about what these trainings are. So you can see, I don't know if you looked at this earlier or not, but Tuesday, September 8th, we do have a session in the morning now. So we are doing these kind of catch-up trainings on Mondays. But since Monday is Labor Day next week, we are actually going to do one on Tuesday. So it looks like we'll be doing team meetings for synchronous learning again with me and Kyle. But Jim Unger will be moderating that morning as we kind of go through some training. I'm sure School Connects and Savas will be back for some of that, hopefully. And then I will be back in the afternoon with, we're not really sure what yet, but we will have some trainings for you all to make sure that we're keeping that online learning going, and we're trying to stay consistent in how we offer you some support and some training. Well, Michelle, we've got 36 people here. It's 3:26. Are you guys feeling ready to go? Or it's like 4 minutes early, but that just gives you all more time,
good.
right?
Yeah. So we keep getting the 3:30 time slot. I feel like that's not prime time.
No, it's not. Yeah, we're. You guys are like one of those West Coast basketball games right now. Like that's kind of the slot you're getting, right?
It's all good. It's all good. So it was fabulous. We were all tuning in this morning and watching you and Kyle. You guys were awesome this morning, figuring all of this out very quickly. You guys, it's just amazing. Thank you. And we think we have some pretty great ideas that we're going to share today. We're going to defer to you on anything too technical, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great.
And okay. All right. So everybody, you want to introduce yourselves? I'm Michelle. I work with the high school team.
Go ahead, Drew. I saw you.
I'm Drew Courtney. I'm also working with the high schools.
All right, let's go middle school.
I am Molly Lang. I'm one of the middle school EL resource teachers.
And I don't see Elizabeth yet. Is Elizabeth here?
I don't think she's in yet.
So we'll go on
one more. And then I'm Amy Whitehead. I'm with elementary.
So our presentation today, what we were really thinking about is, we know that when English learners feel comfortable and when we scaffold their instruction, that they're going to do great things and they can really achieve at high levels. So we're going to share some things you can do that are in Microsoft Teams and then some things that are just great instructional and emotional scaffolds. Does that sound good, Matt?
Mm-hmm. I am super excited. I always love when you all present, so it's going to be awesome.
I love working with your bride over at Iroquois. She's amazing.
Oh, she really likes you too. Every time she works with you, she's like, "Oh, I just love Michelle Shorey. She's awesome."
Mary's fun. All right, so I'm gonna share, and let's see. So I've got my button up here, 3 dots. Share screen, and let's see. You guys have a screen?
Yep, you're there.
All right. I'm gonna hide that. I hate seeing that. And because you guys are awesome, you always remind us to turn on the captions.
Yes.
So
you all are pros now. We don't need to remind anybody anymore.
So have you ever done this in PowerPoint?
So I think it's at the bottom left in PowerPoint, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. And do you know in PowerPoint, you can do different languages?
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. We might have time to show you today, so we'll show you. All right, so we'll get started. So these are the things we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about accessibility features in Microsoft. We're also going to talk about Teams features for English learners. We'll hit on synchronous tips for English learners because really it's not just about the tech. We all know that, right? It's about the pedagogy of how do we design instruction online. We'll talk about some emotional supports in synchronous learning and then instructional supports for ELs and English with English learners. And then finally, how can you contact us for support? We have a lot going on. We have a lot of trainings. We want to tell you what's going on with us. So first of all, we want to tell you that it doesn't need to be about Google or Microsoft. We think that when you use Google and Microsoft together, it's awesome. So I want to show you. Matt, do you know Irina McGrath?
I do, yes.
So she's my partner in crime, and we have this little website that we do on this just for fun. It's called ELL 2.0. And this summer we did a conference and we actually looked at all the accessibility features in Google and Microsoft, and we wanted to compare them so people could see, the different languages. Google has a lot more languages. But Microsoft has the immersive reader, which is just amazing. And so when we did a side-by-side of Meet and Teams, we saw that they're essentially the same. You have the same captioning in English, you can record meetings, but the big difference is that if we get more functionality with Microsoft Teams, if we can use that immersive reader, that's going to be really powerful for our kids. And so immersive reader, I want to show you quick. I know we've done a show on this before, but basically if you go to office.com and you use the online version of Microsoft Word, you can go ahead and go to View after you type something and click Immersive Reader. And then you have this set of tools. And so if you are an English teacher, you can go ahead and click on grammar options. And this is such a highly visual tool that this would be great to use in distance learning because you can show kids nouns, adjectives, verbs, etc. But what we really like in the ESL world is that you can go over to this little book and you can translate it. And so make sure you click document, and that's going to translate everything. Here's the amazing part. If you click this arrow, you get a read aloud, so students can have the text read aloud to them. So one of the things we should be doing during NTI is showing kids how to use Immersive Reader. This is a really powerful tool. And I know during NTI 1.0, we showed how to use Office Lens, and that kids can just have that app on their phones. So now digging into just Microsoft Teams, we wanted to see, what accessibility features are there for English learners. The first one for sure would be gallery view. If you speak another language, watching a person's face is super helpful. And so with English learners, they might be shy. They might not want to show their faces. And we would definitely encourage teachers to think about that, about whether students need to show their faces or not, especially for some of our Muslim girls. That is not going to be comfortable for them to show their faces. Most of them don't wear their hijabs at home. So thinking about that gallery view, that's going to be really essential. And I know we have to do a little updating to get that. But that gallery view is going to help us if kids feel comfortable showing their faces. But definitely if they can see the teacher's face, that's going to be really helpful for them in comprehending. Another thing that's really going to support English learners in Microsoft Teams is closed captioning. When kids see captions, that helps them match the words with what they're hearing. That really, really helps with attention and focus, but it also supports those developing readers. And I'm a French teacher as well. And one of the things that helps me when I watch French movies is if I can turn on those subtitles in French, that really increases my comprehension when I can see what I'm hearing, because it's usually just a little too fast for me. So thinking about distance teaching, what we want to really think about is that talk. We want to reduce the amount of teacher talk that we have because we don't want to just fill the space with that talk. We want to think about students engaging in dialogue because we know that when kids are talking, learning increases. We know this from Hattie. Look at that, 0.82. 0.4 is really good, but 0.82 is amazing. So if students are engaged in discussions, that's going to be really good. So think about your synchronous sessions as a time for kids to talk and for a time for kids to do the learning, and for teachers, to back off a little bit. So thinking about ways we can get our kids talking and us talking a little bit less. Have you read this book, Matt?
I haven't. I've seen so many people on social media talk about it, but I haven't had a chance to pick it up yet.
It's really good. I highly recommend it. It's got lots of ideas for, synchronous instruction because it is different, right? When you have just a precious few hours a week, you really want to make the most of it and think about how you can get kids talking.
Your closed captions are off, by the way, just that I mentioned.
Oh yeah. I'm going to hit present.
Yep.
I'll turn back on. There we go. Another thing we want to think about with that synchronous time is, a lot of our kids come from collectivist cultures where it's really important for them to work together. As Americans, we're in a very individualistic culture where we don't mind working alone, but we really want to have opportunities for our kids to build community and work together. Drew Courtney and I taught summer school together. Molly taught too on our team, and we saw that kids really, really enjoy learning and working together. You can also have interaction. Think about opportunities for kids to interact with each other. We really want to increase discussion. As we saw, there's a really high effect size for learning with that. And of course, we're going to have direct instruction. We're going to show kids how to do things, but we want to incorporate some sort of activity every 3 minutes, whether it's a quick gesture, whether it's a quick head nod, hand raising, something. And then we're really looking forward to when we get breakouts hopefully we'll get breakouts, that we can start doing things like jigsaw and grouping, which have a huge effect on student learning. And so now Drew's going to talk about what we want to avoid.
Yep, so when we are doing your synchronous lessons, a couple things that you do want to try to avoid is definitely the lecturing without any interaction. So if you have a 30-minute synchronous lesson that's going on, try not to be talking for all 30 minutes, because we all know that usually the focus, we lose kids during that just lecturing. So even if you do have to go over a lot of instruction, at least kind of do those pauses where like give them a thumbs up or a gesture or something, just so that way it kind of breaks up the instruction a little bit. The other thing we also say to try to avoid is reviewing assignments. We think that that's best if you use a screencast for it. Because then also screencasts are great because you can post it and kids can go back and rewatch it. So if they're confused, they can always go back, pause it, rewatch, and can get the instructions that way. And if you need some tips or tricks for doing screencasts, I think an awesome group did a show about a couple weeks ago about screencasts, and that is somewhere on YouTube that you guys can watch. So now I'll turn it over to Amy, who's going to talk about some emotional supports.
Thanks, Drew. So no matter what the educational setting or what video conferencing tool you're using, the most important part of teaching, and I think we can all agree, is that relationship and community building. And one of the gurus in second language acquisition, Stephen Krashen, talks about something called the affective filter. And basically what that means is that when students are learning a new language and they feel unsure or anxious, their comprehension of the new language is much lower. So we want to do everything we can to make them feel safe and welcomed. And one great way to do that is something very simple, such as taking the time to get to know how to pronounce their name. And I think our specialist Vomini is in the chat, and she's going to put in there for you a link to a website that you can use. If you're not sure how to say a kid's name, you can just type their name in there and it will actually pronounce it for you so that you can practice, so that you don't find yourself maybe constantly asking the kid during a class call, how do you say your name again? Although they might appreciate that, if you can do it another time, that will make them feel very welcome. And then just anything you can do to make them see that you value their culture is going to make them feel safe. The next suggestion we have is having something up already shared in the meeting. Vomini is also going to put in the chat a link to Classroom Screen. We really love this for English learners because, as you can see here on this example, you can put some text up there that might include the icebreaker question or a checklist, or here are the things you need when class starts. It also has on there work symbols such as silence as you enter. You could have the timer going so they know class is going to start in about 5 minutes. You can also see some of the other work symbols along there on the bottom. You can change the background to match whatever theme it is you might be covering in that particular session. Or if you're a content teacher, using something that goes along with your content. You can do random name, groupings. There's so much to be done with Classroom Screen for synchronous lessons and distance learning, and also really face-to-face as well. So we love this tool to engage in making them feel safe. They know what to expect. They know what's coming.
Hey, Amy.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever tried the sound level when we're actually in class?
I have, actually. It's really cool.
I love that one.
Yes, that one's great.
Okay.
And yes, the next thing we really love for English learners is that hand raise feature. So we thought that this could be a non-threatening way to encourage participation and to teach them how to use the feature. So we thought of a game. It could be something like, and I'm thinking of probably more like primary kids, but raise your hand if you like cats. And then you teach them how to click on the hand to actually indicate yes, that they do. And the teacher can say, oh, I see that Samantha loves cats, and you could also even take it a step further and add sentence frames with it to have them prepare to answer that question verbally, if that's where you are in the relationships with your class where they feel comfortable doing that. The next thing with this hand raise feature that we love is sort of incorporating it into your digital classroom management. So once you've taught them how to use the feature, you can set it as an expectation for signaling with the hand raise that you are ready to answer this question and the teacher can unmute you, or the teacher can tell them to unmute. So one way to really structure that interaction with this feature that we really love is called QSSA. So you pose the question, just like I did with the raise your hand if. You give them the STEM, where they actually can see how to answer the question. They are prepared. They can rehearse it themselves with the microphone off if need be. They signal with the hand raise, yes, I'm prepared to answer this question. And in that way, they know that no matter who they call on, they're prepared and ready to answer. And you can quickly assess whether or not the kids were really understood whatever the question was. So that can be really fun and made into a game, or you can really attach it to content as they get to know that particular strategy. Okay. And another feature that we love for thinking about social emotional supports is because this lobby is enabled anyhow with the meeting features, you could take it as an opportunity for a couple ways. So you could make it a goal to meet with every single kid one-on-one before the meeting starts. So you see your kids coming into the lobby and you say, I want to meet with Adam today. So you let Adam in first and you just really quickly have a quick chat with him before you let everyone else in. Maybe there's a student who you're kind of concerned about and you just want to check in with them really quickly before the group gets going to just see if there's anything they need. Or it could be, maybe I'm thinking of secondary, that as we get used to this platform, you're going to maybe have a student present. So you let them in and check with them. Do you have your presentation ready? Do you need any help? Do you have any questions about what it is today? Or on the flip side, just prepping a student, I'm going to pose this question when everybody comes in, and I want you to be the first one to answer. Let's practice. So it just gives you just really limitless opportunities to check in with kids one-on-one before you start the whole group session. And I believe Drew is going to take us to discuss instructional supports.
Yeah. So now some ideas that we want to share when you're having those synchronous lessons. We kind of want to share some ideas that we've got for our English learners to help them academically and instructionally. So really when we think of the types of scaffolds that we like to use, I love this visual. And I believe Bomni is going to put the link to this visual in the chat. And when we think about forms of scaffold, really we want to think with our English learners as there's three big ones. We have the sensory, the interactive, and then the graphic scaffold. So for sensory, providing illustrations, finding videos, real life objects to really reinforce your lessons. The interactive piece is crucial. Of course, we want kids to be talking. So whether it is pairs, small groups, whole language, even using the home language is a great form of interaction with our students. And then our last thing is our graphics. So having charts, tables, infographics, we just need something that our kids can see. So when we kind of think about what to do during your synchronous lessons, one simple way, and Amy kind of talked about this, is just to do simple gestures. So if you're presenting a lesson and you want to see thumbs up, thumbs down, okay, it's a very non-threatening way for our English learners to kind of say, hey, I get it, or no, I think I need to review this a little bit more. Another way that you can is by using, this will have a little more prep to it, but if you could have the kids create like colored cards. So we just said like green, yellow, red. And there's tons and tons of ideas that you can use this for, where you can use them as like hold up yes, or hold up green for yes, and red for no. So again, another like non-threatening way for students to interact with your lesson. You can do them as true, false. You can kind of do them as informal checks. I like to call these like pulse checks. So if you're in the middle of a lesson, kind of be like, okay, how you guys feeling? Green's good. Yellow means we need to go over this a little bit more. Or red is I'm really lost and confused. And it's also great for icebreakers too. Kind of like getting like see how your mood is. Green, you're good. Yellow, you're so-so. Red, you're like, oh, it's Monday again, type of a way. But it's a great kind of simple kind of check-in that you can do with your students.
So what do you guys think if we didn't, we don't get kids these cards, what is a way that we could work around this? I'm thinking that kids could just color a card, perhaps like an index card with different colored crayons or markers. Amy, what do you think on the elementary side? How could we support kids with this?
Well, like the suggestion you just made, I know a lot of elementary schools were sending home supplies with kids to make sure that they had, like crayons. So, I mean, it could even be where the teacher says, I want you to go find 3 things in your house, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 red. And then that could be something that they use to hold up if they don't have, an actual card. It could be items. And that's a good way for the littles to make sure you can check in that they know their colors.
Love it. And you're incorporating movement. And I'm thinking at a secondary level, I don't know, Elizabeth or Molly chime in, but I'm thinking a simple yes/no card might even work here too.
That could definitely work as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So in Teams, another great feature that Microsoft has is the ability to turn on captions. So they are available in the app for Microsoft Teams. There is a little I believe it's like 3 dots. And if you click on that, you'll see where it says turn on live captions. They are in English, but again, they do provide a graphic support. Kind of like how Michelle said earlier, it's kind of nice because I was a Spanish teacher. When I was listening to stuff in Spanish, it is nice to have the captions of them speaking it because it does help me with my comprehension, because sometimes, they do speak fast. And same thing with our English learners too. If they have the captions on, they'll be able to comprehend what's being said as well. The only thing is that the students will have to turn them on. So that could be something that maybe the first synchronous lesson you have to kind of teach them where it is they can turn on the captions and just practice with it. But it's a feature that the students will have to turn on themselves.
I remember in TI 1.0, we all got so excited because we saw the captions in Google Meet, but we didn't realize the kids couldn't see them, that the user has to enable them. So that's a great catch, Drew.
And another great feature, if you use PowerPoint, I know that we are all in the world of Google, but PowerPoint also, now we're kind of in both worlds now. We're in Google and Microsoft, but PowerPoint does have the ability to turn on captions in different languages. So if you have to do the office.com. If you go on the PowerPoint, if you go to slideshow, you will see Michelle's on here where it says always use subtitles. If you click the little drop down box, you can say the spoken language, of course, we English, but then the subtitle language, you can change it to multiple different languages. Now, take this with, when we say this, there only one language will be shown for the subtitles. So it'd be great if you have, a class and, most of them do speak Spanish. That could be helpful, but we also want you to remember that there might be other students in your class as well who speak a different language. So try not to exclude them with the subtitles, but it is a great tool to use if you do need some different languages in your class. And now I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's going to explain about the whiteboard, or Elizabeth, excuse me, sorry, Elizabeth.
That's okay. Okay, so now that we've jumped into this world of Microsoft Teams, we have some new features that we can play with. So one of those is this Microsoft Whiteboard. You can access this through your share tray. So it's in the same spot where you would go to share your screen with your class. You can choose to share a whiteboard. This is very similar to Jamboard, which I know a lot of people have started using from the Google interface, but the whiteboard is just a little bit different. So you have options. You can use markers, you can add a text box, and you can add a Post-it note. You do not have the option to add images on Microsoft Whiteboard. But this is a great tool that we can use to have the sensory, interactive, and graphic scaffolds that Drew was talking about a little bit earlier. A couple things to take note of, though. You cannot change the sharing settings at this time. So anyone who is in your team will have the ability to add and delete from your whiteboard. Another important thing to note is that if you go to this little settings wheel, you can you can export this image. So if you want to save the work that you've done with your class, you can do that through there. And one little workaround that we figured out while we don't have chat features, while we're waiting for that to be enabled, you can add links to your Jamboard or to your whiteboard. So if there's a link you want your students to access, you do have to use the keyboard controls. So you have to use Control-C to copy and then Control-V, and you can paste it into a text box and then share links with your students that way. So now we're going to talk about Jamboard. So Jamboard is kind of like the Google equivalent to the Microsoft Whiteboard. Jamboard is a little bit different in that you can change the sharing settings. So if you want to just demonstrate something for your students, you can set your sharing settings to view only, and then they will not have the ability to manipulate anything. If you want collaboration, you can change those sharing settings to give anyone with the link the ability to edit. So one really great thing that we've liked to do on Jamboards is you can add multiple pages. So maybe your first page is instructions or something like this that, to check in with your kids. And then on the next pages, they can collaborate to brainstorm, they could work in groups. It's just a really great collaborative tool. And I think that's really all we have to say about Jamboard. So now Molly is going to jump in and finish up.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I know some of us are really missing that chat feature that we had in Google Meets that we don't have yet, like Elizabeth mentioned, here in Microsoft Teams. Especially for L's, maybe they're not ready to speak out yet using their microphone and they'd much prefer to type. So one workaround we have for that is the Q&A feature that's already in Google Slides. So if the slides for your synchronous lesson are made in Google Slides, you can click the Q&A, you would start new. And if you want, you can make this dialog box large, like full screen, and then you can slide this over to kind of make it half and half. And as you see there on the left, you have your presentation, and across the top it says ask a question and it gives the link. If your students go to that link in a new tab, they're able to type in questions during your presentation that will pop up over here in the right. So that is one workaround we have that would make it appear like a chat feature. If you are someone who wants your students to be able to ask questions, but maybe don't want those popping up for the rest of your class to see, you can still enable the Q&A feature. It will give you that code there across the top. But then you can, I think, close out of that, or you can put it up in a new tab. So that then students are still able to ask questions, but they're not showing up for everyone to see. And instead, you can come and view them at the end, and you can discuss them at the end, or you can address those questions with your students individually, kind of one-on-one after your presentation is over. So that is the Q&A feature in Google Slides. If you click that link, it'll take you to this page. So if I'm back here, I'm displaying this for my students to see. And if I go to that link, that is where their questions will appear. And that is also what students will see when they type in a question. So that is a workaround to kind of have that chat feature still available to you during your synchronous lessons. And then one final thing we wanted to talk about today is the ability to record your meetings in Microsoft Teams. So we recommend that first you turn off incoming video, so that kind of protects the privacy of your students. And then you can start recording. When you are finished and you end the session or end the meeting, it will save it in your Microsoft Teams app. And then you can download that to your computer as an MP4 and upload that then to your Google Classroom for students who maybe missed the session. This will, of course, give them the power of pause so they can listen and re-listen to things that you say, take notes, maybe open Google Translate to the side and kind of work on translating some important concepts on their own. So that is a feature that we really like for ELLs as well, because a lot of times, even if they made the original meeting, they like to come back and watch it later using that power of pause. So if you need help, we love supporting you. The hashtag we use on Twitter is JCPSESL, so please tag that and all the awesome stuff you're doing to support ELLs in your classroom. And also, if you need some support from us, we have office hours set up, so reach out to us if you want to schedule some one-on-one time for support. For PD, we have some backed by popular demand modules that we offered this summer that are in the works of being put back on PD Central. These are asynchronous modules that cover a wide variety of topics having to deal with ESL. So be looking out for those on PD Central. You can work at your own pace. You can do one of them or you can do all of them. That is completely your choice. We are also in the process of creating some PD for content teachers that will go through the 8 key practices for working with and supporting your ELLs. So we will communicate that out to you all when that is created as well. And we also have Appy Hour, or our Lunch and Learn, starting tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Quick 15-minute sessions that talk about different tools that you can use with ELLs during this digital learning, and we'll communicate that via Twitter as well. So be on the lookout for those.
So were there any questions in the chat or anything do you have any questions, Matt, for us? Or
No, I don't think so. Some of the questions in the chat were just to paste some of those links in there. So I put your presentation in, and I also put in pronouncenames.com and classroomscreen.com for everybody as well. So
great. Well, we appreciate it. We love that you give us an opportunity to share. This is a great way for us to reach so many people, and we love working with you. And thanks for all that you're doing with Teams. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you all. You guys always share so many awesome resources. I always learn something. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Matt.
Right. Bye. Bye, you all. Have a great Monday.
Bye.
All right, everybody, chat side, thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We loved having you here. Again, we deeply, deeply appreciate all the flexibility and adaptability that you've shown the past couple weeks. If you need anything, please reach out to your Zone Digital Innovation leaders. We will see you again next Tuesday. I'll try to pull up the schedule here for that. Next Tuesday, September 8th, because we have the Monday off for Labor Day. We'll see you then. Remember, JCPS chat tonight, 7:30 on Twitter. Use the hashtag JCPS chat to participate. Thank you again. We appreciate you.